Hello, friends, and welcome to the Cornerstone Collective. My name is Jay Brown. I'm your host. And with us today is Angus McLeod,
Hey.
as well as Javan Corbin.
Hello, hello.
Brown. I guess you shouldn't go with the middle name, but that's all good. Hey, we are the intersection of Christ and culture, talking about all these things that are interacting in our world and how we, as Christ followers, are navigating them. We talk about that through the lens of the 7 C's. Those are 7 C statements or categories which we talk about. Those are commitment, community, communication, competence, creativity, compassion, and celebration. Today, talking about our commitment to Christ, we want to look at Colossians 3, 1 and 2. Angus, can you read that for us?
Sure. If you have then been raised with Christ, seek the things that are above, where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. Set your mind on things that are above, not on things that are on earth. Colossians 3, 1 and 2.
Amen. So our perspective is called to be those who are thinking about heavenly things and about how we belong to the kingdom of God and acting in that way. So that's a powerful thing. Jumping off today, we want to talk about this idea of commitment to Christ, and it's really interesting because it is kind of an intersection between tech and faith, in that we see that there have been a lot of Christians who recently here in the United States have actually been targeted through geolocating on their devices as they go into churches on Sunday morning, as well as being targeted with ads specifically as well. Angus, you brought a little bit of this up to me about it. What's been your take looking at it?
Yeah, I was seeing it. It was very interesting. So the idea for people who don't have any concept of what it is they'll put on the computer, they'll put like a mark around the church.
Like a geofence.
A geofence, yeah, thank you. And so as soon as your phone crosses that line, it registers that now you're at a church. And then what happens is the Bluetooths start talking and all the phones start talking. And what it does is it creates a map of basically your church and your interactions. It shows how long you came and stayed and who you talked to and all this kind of stuff. Why people would need that? I don't know, but it's very interesting that it's going on, and it's one of those things that it could definitely have some nefarious purposes.
That's true. And just to be clarified, this is not the churches doing that. It's not our church doing it or any other church that we've ever heard of doing this. This is technology companies that are tracking these things. This is maybe governmental agencies that are tracking these things.
Correct.
So similar to how like maybe a store would use the same kind of geofencing targeting anybody who's within their certain mileage that drives in there, they might want to try to track them and target them for ads. Similarly, they're doing that for Christ followers by tracking them and seeing who they're connected to and who their networks are, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. That's a very interesting idea, isn't it?
Yeah.
Javan, you've kind of seen this, thinking that you've been growing up in it, kind of native to the concepts. What's your thought process with this? Because it comes back to, some of our privacy laws.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a big issue because I feel like as soon as you start tracking people's information, especially at somewhere where they feel like that they're supposed to, that they're personally supposed to be safe at,
right,
then it gets a little bit dicey. But at the same time, I think by signing just like the contracts or obligations that you have to like Apple or Google, you kind of consent to give that information away, and they kind of get to do whatever they want with it. So like you kind of give and take. I know people are upset about it because like they feel like it's an invasion of their privacy, but at the same time, in order to use that, you kind of give up your privacy. So there's no real way around it unless you use like, I don't know, like a really old like Verizon phone, or you use like a BlackBerry or something like that if you really want to stay like off the grid. But I don't know. I don't really think there's any way around it. It's the same thing as like if you have digital cameras installed in your house for security reasons,
right,
they're still looking through your cameras and like looking at pretty much anything you're doing. And like even though Ring is apparently supposed to draw back on like whatever they were doing with the Super Bowl, it's like the same thing. Like they'll be like, oh yeah, no, we're not going to do that anymore. But it's like now they're just not telling the public that they're doing it. So it's going to happen either way. There's really not much that we can do about it unless people just try to go off the grid in general. But yeah, the fact that it's being targeted against Christians specifically is really interesting. I think like, especially because it feels like there's a good presence growing of like Muslims that are coming into the country, especially with like news that we hear about things related to like Somalia or in New York and things like that. So I'm surprised that they're doing it for Christians specifically. I don't know. It's pretty interesting.
I'm not so certain that they are. I think what they're using is, I think that has been revealed somehow in the marketing. And someone who's probably a Christ follower was like, wait, why are we being targeted this way? I'm definitely assured that they're also doing that to mosques on Friday or one of the days that they're going. I'm assuming they're doing it to them as well. Interestingly, we've seen this as well. people are using that geofencing, geolocating kind of things. People that are crossing those fences into places like churches or into places like mosques, they will then be targeted with ads. So I know like pro-Israel groups in the United States have taken out ads to target Christ followers to be pro-Israel. Similarly, those who are going to mosques have been targeted for pro-Palestine. And other places that they might go where they would say, well, maybe this person's more left-leaning because they support this place, this location. So if they cross into that, suddenly they're going to trigger those. And essentially what you watch then triggers to the people in your circle to also see it as well. So that's why they're trying to do some of these kind of things. And it's very insightful because it shows like, you know, where you're being fed this stuff. It kind of goes back to that documentary that talks about our involvement with social media. We were just having the conversation off air, talking about the very concept of, you know, what kind of impact we want for our children and when we want them to be allowed to do some of these things like participate in social media. Obviously, we know that teenagers forever have been using social media. They'll lie to use it. So they increase the age of 16. They'll, you know, they're 13. They say they're 16. They can change the date. It's not very hard. You don't have to validate with ID or anything like that. So because of that reason, it makes it really hard for you to kind of enforce any of those rules. And because it's not just adults only, then that's whenever predators or other people can get involved or people with nefarious perspectives to try to do something towards someone who would be otherwise unknowing. So it's interesting from a Christ follower perspective to see that we're being targeted in this way. We know that under previous administrations in the United States, it was proven out. I know Mark Zuckerberg talked about it from Facebook perspective that, you know, the Biden administration was very much they were being those who were shadow banning people. They were blocking with their content. They were very much trying to control the narrative and pushing these other narratives. And Facebook, because they wanted to function, they went along with what the people said. And now that that person's not over them anymore in control, they start being very vocal about what's going on. And it was insightful to hear that because you're like, well, I thought you were in control. And they're like,
Yeah.
There's like a level above us. So there is a piece of that with our thinking about our commitment to Christ where it's like, hey, listen, there will be some of those who target you because of your faith in Christ. So I think it gives us all more reason why we do what we do with life groups, because we're meeting not just here at the church location, but throughout the week, throughout the city with other people. And you can go and connect with people wherever they are one-on-one. You can do it on Zoom. You can do it other things. And so there's a piece of that where it's like, you know, in the future, they might try to clamp down on us like collectively meeting in one place corporately, but they have a real hard time stopping the church from going forward because it's our belief and not just some kind of organized religion.
Yeah.
It's who we are as people living this out as a community of faith. So
Amen.
the Lord help us navigate it.
Yeah, for sure.
Fun topics, the Epstein files, more good stuff. And by good, I mean absolutely horrible and terrible things that are coming out of the Epstein files. We have seen a recent laptop that was cracked, that was found connected to the Epstein files, and it was really in association to some of what has been reported as child trafficking or even human meat, to use that term, which is a terrible term, for cannibalism and some of the organ processing stuff, and how there are names and emails on a list that have essentially come out recently, and they're saying that there are reportedly 17 members of Congress, 4 Hollywood A-list people, 3 Silicon Valley founders, 2 Wall Street hedge fund managers, and a former NATO Secretary General that are all on this list, connected in some way to either organ trafficking, child something or other. I don't know what exactly is all this is up to, but man, what a scary thing to see all these people in these high-profile places, high power places, to be connected, even theoretically, to this stuff. Super scary.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's been your take on it?
Well, first, I think that it's really easy to get wrapped up in the emotions and everything. I think it's important that we remember that all of the people wrapped up in this, they all need Jesus just as much.
That's very true.
As people who aren't committing these atrocities, you know, because it could be through. And so I'm still praying for the salvation of these people because, you know, it's as some of these come to Christ that maybe we get some whistleblowers and things like that, because we know ultimately none of them will get away with it. And we want to see justice and we all want vengeance for these people to some degree here on earth.
Yep.
And so I'm just praying, Lord, that your will be done
Yep.
here on earth as it would be in heaven, because that's the only way I can really pray about this. Because if I pray the way I want to,
Right.
I'm praying vengeance.
Yeah, sure.
You
yeah.
know, and
yeah, because you're motivated out of the way you feel, protecting as a father,
yeah,
all the reasons
and,
why you'd feel that way.
and it's really hard. And so I think that just by praying for these people to come to an understanding of what it is that they're doing, and that the Lord would just begin to turn these people and turn their hearts back to Him. You know, that doesn't mean that they won't face justice here on earth,
as they should.
But you know, that's really where I'm trying to keep myself in that pocket of I need to be prayerful about this, and that the Lord's will would be done.
Absolutely. Javan, you've seen a lot of this Epstein stuff's been coming across the way. What do you think about, are you surprised at all that this kind of tier of people are accounted for or essentially suggested to be connected to the Epstein files?
I mean, no, not really, because in order for anything like what Epstein was doing to go on, you definitely need people in those places that are able to orchestrate all that stuff.
Right.
So the fact that this is coming out is just kind of like putting names to everybody that's been behind it. But anybody that's really followed this since like it was first reported about like Epstein's human trafficking back in, I think it was 2019 when like he was taken to prison, right? Before he died.
Theoretically.
Or died, yeah. I say died.
Theoretically.
Yeah. In quotation marks. But yeah, it's been very interesting. And I mean, like we know biblically that because Satan is the prince of this world, that inevitably there is darkness to some degree of essentially everything behind a domain that claims to be like focused on the goodness of people and things like that. Like there will be infiltration of darkness to every capacity. And we understand that, I mean, obviously not every human is perfect, but there are certainly people, and it just tends to be a more elite group of people that are worshiping and revolving everything they do around Satan. And I mean, yes, we pray for these people, and yes, we obviously want them to come to Christ because everybody deserves a chance at that fairly, because no man is without blemish, and everybody deserves a chance at that grace. But at the same time, we need to figure out a line as to kind of where we're willing to step in for justice, because a lot of what's going on now is I'll just talk. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. Oh my gosh, we need like retribution for this, but then nobody's actually doing anything. So I don't know. I think over the next like few months, few years, we need to see like actual political action for something taken like this, because I mean, it's literally like undeniable as to the amount of evidence there is for this stuff, and yet we've still seen no trials. We've seen no real like arrests, criminal charges, anything for anybody. It's all just kind of like, oh yeah, oh my gosh, no way that's going on, and then everybody just moves on.
Yeah, so. And that's part of the scary part. You know, you see like the FBI director saying, oh, we don't have any actionable intelligence. In the past, he was saying this, and we're like, wait, are you reading the same documents we're reading? Because we see lots of actionable intelligence here. Lots of people going to prison for less. So let the jury decide. You know what I mean? Present the evidence, let the jury decide. And so it's really interesting in that way, because we're like, man, you know, we want the truth to come out. We want justice to be served. We do and can and should pray for every person to have repentance in their heart and have that opportunity. To Angus's point, it's a very good point. But as well as the tension of the justice that needs to come so that these things can be stopped, and so that those who have done these things have to pay for what they did.
Yeah.
And it's terrible, terrible, terrible. One of the people that's been connected to the Epstein files is Prince Andrew out of the royal family. And once he kind of was attached to it, they stripped him of his title formally, even though everybody still calls him Prince Andrew because of what he was before. But he essentially was kind of put on house arrest and some other things. And they eventually moved him out of Buckingham Palace and to some other estate somewhere. Now he's been removed from that as well, and the stipend that was there for him. So very interesting. On his birthday recently, in the past week or two, he was actually arrested for his participation in what was released in the Epstein files. And actually they went and arrested him in the middle of what he was headed to do. And there was this picture that the paparazzi got kind of through the front windshield into the back. And he looked absolutely shell-shocked. He's kind of leaning back. It's a famous picture. Well, it's interesting about that is people took that picture, then they went and they printed that picture out in like pretty good size. They framed it, and then activists went into the Louvre and hung it in the Louvre like it was a piece of art, with a little plaque underneath it, and said who it was and everything else. It's very interesting because people are not letting this go, man. They're like, no, we need to see exactly what you said, some justice for this stuff. Are you guys surprised at all that people would be gutsy enough to do that kind of thing?
No, not at all. In fact, you know, I hope that that we do see some movement, you know, in this, so that people at least question whether or not they should engage in that sort of behavior.
Yeah.
You know, but it's wild to think that somebody I ended up laughing at first, and then I realized, man, but the reason for it is so dark.
Yeah.
So yeah.
We know like Banksy, kind of the street artists that hung stuff in the Louvre in the past or in other, famous places, kind of modified art or things that were very like avant-garde, and they've gone and done that and put stuff up and made it match everything. And that's what these guys did too. Obviously we know about the Louvre robbery where they used a mover to get up to the level and then cut in there with an angle iron and then cut in and steal jewels. So people are taking stuff out. People are putting stuff in. Yeah. So it's an exchange at this point in the Louvre. So really crazy. We obviously, having lived in Paris, we've talked about this narrative in the past, but having lived in Paris, Javan having grown up there when he was a little kid, I've spent lots and lots of time in the Louvre, taken lots of people to see the Mona Lisa, walked through that thing in circles, and an amazing place, a huge place. And there is a lot of security, but most of it is in getting into and then kind of the separate areas. They kind of make sure that everything's going in the same direction. That was kind of the response of what people were like, how could they break in here and be by the jewels? Like, well, it's safe all the way up to here. They're not thinking you're coming in through the window. Yeah. So that's why there wasn't like armed guards right on top of the jewels. Well, similarly to this, like they can go and find a space to go and get in there. So interesting for sure. It makes me kind of think about the response to this. And I think more and more of this is going to happen as people really have to come and pay for what they did as far as connection to, in Andrew's case, his connection to underage girls, and obviously a lot of evidence that showed him directly connected to them, where he had said that he had no connection to it before, and obviously was seen as not true. Mm-hmm. There's even been reports recently, which I saw an interview with a police officer who was there at Buckingham Palace for years and years. He talked about the process by which people would come in and out of Buckingham Palace and how they had like a whole front kind of a reception area that you had to go through one set of police, and then there was a secondary set of police that allowed you into the residence, and how Ghislaine Maxwell essentially had carte blanche to come in and out to come see Prince Andrew. He had a door that was not too far away from where they had to enter the secondary area, and they essentially said, don't put her name on the log. She can come and go if she wants.
Wow.
Which is super sketchy. Yeah. So yeah, not happy about that, but good to see that some people are finding the justice of what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
Interesting, as we talk about faith, is that we see Vladimir Putin was weighing in on the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Now, Charlie Kirk being someone who professed Jesus, very much about the things of Jesus, convincing people and having debate with people about what it means to be someone who believes in Christ, and a lot of other political things as well. Obviously, that's what he's known for. But as his assassination, Putin actually is attributed to say that the Charlie Kirk assassination was an atrocity and that he stood for defending the values for which he died. Mm-hmm. And they were like, that's a huge deal for someone who is kind of like a political frenemy of ours to be saying these kind of things in alignment, similar to what you'd hear from the president, Donald Trump. And so it's similar to hear that. I was like, this is interesting because obviously the war in Ukraine, we're funding Ukraine's weapons. They're fighting against Russia, and simultaneously you have Russia who's aligning with some of these statements and things. It's very insightful. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah. You have that?
Oh, I was just going to say it's the right message, wrong messenger. I mean, Vladimir Putin has put a ton of people on the ground. Whether or not he did it directly is like, but the KGB has carried out some
We're going to say theoretically. Theoretically.
Nah, but I mean, still, dude, like it's... I understand what he's trying to do as far as like make a statement for political activism, and the fact that because America preaches to be so open and accepting of everybody, that we should be willing to like hear people out and not murder people for their beliefs.
Correct.
I understand that from like a political standpoint, but it's also like the kind of authoritarian regime that he's established over there kind of does like the exact opposite. If there's anybody that really wants to run against Putin or his administration, if you will,
right,
then they're just taken out. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like I think he's won certain presidential votes by like over 100%, which is like it's I don't know.
Hey man, Kim Jong-un, he just got reelected.
Yeah,
and he had 100% of the vote.
Yeah, and I've also
mainly because no one can run against him.
Yeah, exactly. And there's also been statements like of Kim Jong-un coming out against like the evils that some of the Zionist leaders like in Israel have done, as far as like some of the statements that they've come out and said against like against specific people, and also like what they've funded in the past. And it's interesting because you have these Eastern leaders that, at least from like a Western perspective, are always supposed to be like the bad guy.
Right.
But you find that kind of as you study, there's no real like bad guy. Everybody just kind of always advocates for their country as much as they
they're
can.
all bad guys.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like everything's pushed through nationalism. So it's very interesting that they feel an obligation to come out and say this. I don't necessarily think he really has any reason to do so, other than, I mean, if he feels some real conviction in his heart, then I mean, maybe it's a stepping process, but
that'd be amazing.
Yeah, I've seen him do like
amazing.
participate in like certain Orthodox procedures that they do. Like they do something, I think, to mark the beginning of Lent in Russia. There's like certain Eastern Orthodox that will go into like a freezing cold lake. I think it's like -5 degrees. They walk down and then they like fully dunk themselves.
Kind of a baptism kind of moment?
Almost, but it's more like I think it's just like to mark the whatever.
Like
I'm not sure. I think it's more culturally traditional.
Polar Bear Club?
I have no clue, but I mean like in
But you're saying in Russia he's participating in this
like
event.
he's participating in that with Orthodox priests like around him, like,
which is something because he's not known to be a person of faith at all.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but I mean, once again, it's more a question of whether he's doing this to appease like the culture of the Russians and like who are so rooted within Orthodoxy. But I don't know, man. It's just like anytime I really hear like a bunch of these statements about them criticizing each other, it's kind of funny because it's like you kind of need to take a look in the mirror and then like reevaluate.
The messenger's a big deal.
Yeah,
it's a
100%.
great point, actually.
Yeah.
Angus, any perspective on it?
Well, I think one of the things about Putin is, from what I know, is he doesn't really feel that he needs to put on a show for anybody.
That's true. Yeah.
This is who I am. Like, he doesn't feel the need to play politics and all that. It's like, no, this is Russia, and this is what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
And so I think that when he comes out and makes different statements like this, because I've seen the videos and stuff that you were talking, he is very conservative.
Yeah.
And so our view of conservatism may be different in the way we walk things out, but but the thing, when he says these things, I don't really see a lot of political agenda behind them. I mean, he's while he's masterful in the way he calculates and
good
does
communicator.
things, what does he gain by this? This kind of a statement, in chess. Why move a pawn if you don't need to move a pawn? And so with something like this, I think that it should be taken at face value for what it is and recognize that he sees something.
Yeah, that's interesting. It sparked my interest enough to talk about it today because I was just like, man, it's very interesting to see this shift in him, at least talking about these things of ethics and value, because that's never really been about it. It's been more about country and about the people and about opportunity for them, much like any politician would say about their area and about their people. His story as a hard man, like as a hard-cased guy, a tough guy that's done, stuff for his country, but under the previous regime of the USSR, and then coming out of that system into the new Russia, and then obviously moving through its ranks to become the president and, all the things, prime minister, then back to presidency. And so really interesting to see what that looks like, how that will unfold. And it's very strange to have people that are saying these things from an outside perspective. You're like, wait, how do I agree with you? You know what I mean? Like, that's interesting. You know what I mean? That they would say these certain things. So yeah, to your point, it is very interesting, but you do need to look at the messenger and see the continuity of character and their own actions in alignment with what they're saying now, which could be said of all of our politicians as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which ours are way more across the board. They're very much like say this and then say the exact opposite. And you see so many examples of that. That is one thing I do appreciate about our current president, though I don't agree with everything he says. I do appreciate that he's a guy who just says it. Like he just says stuff and you're like, you don't have to kind of worry about what he's thinking. You know what he's thinking.
Yeah.
He's going to tell you on here, or Twitter, or otherwise.
Yeah.
So really interesting as far as the concept goes. But one of the other things that we've been looking at recently, this idea of commitment to Christ, is that there have been so many documents that have come unveiled of guys that are gone in and found the biblical discoveries and finding them even now in reference to the past. So one of the people that's done this a lot is Ron Wyatt. You've seen him, and he's had a lot of Bible kind of documentaries or following the paths of different things. I watched a bunch of them on YouTube. It's really cool because he goes and does all these different kind of archaeological digs and history pieces and shows you all these old documents and finds all these old things. And he'll go through the countries and talk. Man, I watched one last week where he was going in. It like took all this time for them to go to the right place. And then they tried to go and follow some of the path of Abraham. And as they got there, they had to double back like hours and hours and hours by car because they weren't allowed to go into that next country that way. They had to double back and drive around. And so it's like really interesting because they're driving right through the Middle East, like in cars with, they're paid guards and all this stuff. Because, I mean, it is dangerous, man.
Yeah.
You're out here doing it. But they have found really interesting things. So they found in Turkey, they found what they feel is the remains of Noah's Ark, which we've all kind of seen that. It's been out for a long time. But they're doing more and more scans nowadays to see that it is very likely that this is actually a wooden structure that's actually there on top of Mount Ararat and kind of what that looks like. They have also, and his opinion always has been that the Sinai that we talk about with Moses is not actually the Sinai that we think of is the peninsula of the Sinai in Egypt, but actually is in Saudi Arabia. And that's long been a contentious kind of agreement or disagreement. Now, to us in Christendom, some people are very much about location, meaning like this location is very sacred and therefore needs to have something. So there's a St. Catherine's Monastery that's actually in the Sinai. I know there's others that are there. I think that's the name of it. That's been there for a very, very long time. It goes back to Constantine's mother who went on tour and was looking for things. And so they kind of like, well, this is where it is because they didn't have control in Saudi at the time. So whether or not it is actually in Egypt or if it is actually in Saudi, it's very interesting to kind of dialogue and debate those things. As we lived in Egypt and have been to Sinai, it makes more sense to me that it's actually the mountain that's in Saudi Arabia. And the reason is just based on the accounts of where they crossed and how that worked, and then even how those things came about. It makes a lot more sense in the narrative after you've actually been there to be like, well, this makes more sense if it's actually over here in Saudi. And so the mountain that he thinks it is, the whole top of it is already charred. It's all black, which is really interesting. And it's like, well, see how the discoloration in these rocks and has all these things. And then you see not too far away, there's depictions with drawings for what they assume would be where they put the golden calf. The other pieces where they struck, where the rock was struck, the big massive rock with a big split down the middle. All this erosion from what was shown is like continuous flowing water, though it doesn't have a source of water within the rock. So that's all very interesting. It goes right in alignment with the Bible's depiction of what a Christ follower would believe about the narrative of Moses and the children of Israel coming out and then wandering around in the desert, the Saudi desert, for 40 years.
Yeah.
So very interesting. You've seen some of this stuff?
Yeah, I have. In fact, I saw it as well. I think it's really cool, and I really hope that there's more research that goes into these areas, and that more is done to either confirm or disprove. Right. One way or the other. I hope it's more of a confirmation, and I think from the pictures that I've seen, and I've seen some of these pictures over time, so it's not like it's a recent AI generated thing, and but some of them are very compelling pictures, and it makes just as much sense as any of the other suggestions. So I would really love to see more people study and really get some real answers. I think that as these things are confirmed, it really just gives more validity to what the Bible has to say.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the other things that they found, which is really interesting on the documentary I saw, was they found these sulfur balls at Sodom and Gomorrah, where they're still, some of the sulfur balls are still intact, and they were picking them up, and they're all about the A size, and you could just put a flame to them. They instantaneously go on fire and melt. And you're like, wow, that's really interesting, because it just shows that they're, other people were saying, oh yeah, there is destruction at this place called Sodom and Gomorrah that everybody historically said was there. People who are not of faith don't, attribute it to a miracle. So, or, judgment of God. They, we see it's like fire raining down in judgment. Well, from their perspective, like, oh, maybe there was like an earthquake, and then there was also like some kind of an eruption. It's like, they're trying to put it all together and make sense. Yeah. They don't really have a reason of why the sulfur would have came out of nowhere. They don't know where it comes from, why it's there on the ground. It doesn't make sense in any way, but it's there. It's in the mud even today, where they're walking over, finding it's literally everywhere. Yeah. Wow. So really, really interesting. Obviously, that's not where you would plant a city. It's in the middle of a sulfur field. So it doesn't make sense that it would be there before. Right. So there's a lot of things that kind of do give you that lines up with the biblical perspective. Javen, you seen any of these things with Ron Wyatt?
I have. I've seen the cyanide thing, because I think they walked through, it was like a geographical explanation for why it would be the one in Saudi, and it made more sense to me based off like kind of what you were talking about earlier, that everything like surrounding the Saudi location is much more in alignment with what is said in scripture about like the events that took place. Yes. Whereas the cyanide that everybody attributes to, which is much closer to Israel, is does not match the description nearly as closely present day than the other one does. So
Right.
I think, yeah, for that aspect, it probably is the one in Saudi. I've also seen things about like Ark of the Covenant and about where they like think the actual lying place of it is. I've heard a bunch of different claims. I know like churches have claimed that they've had it forever, that it's like over in the Vatican. That's what they'll always say.
In Ethiopia.
Yeah, Ethiopia is interesting because I think to some degree they actually do have like a lot of validity to their claims if they can trace it correctly, because they claim to have the ark being given to them from King Solomon, that he had a son with, I think it was the Queen of Sheba is who like the biblical figure is. It's not mentioned a lot in the Bible, but throughout Ethiopian mythology and also I think in the Quran, she has like a whole chapter about her, which is pretty interesting.
Okay.
But she's like a really important political figure at that time back then. And just because she was a queen of the area at that time, which is super uncommon.
Right.
And her land was super prosperous. So they think that one of Solomon's sons might have like or gotten the ark back. Now this is obviously like within their
lore.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, a bunch of like civilizations and things will tend to do that, but it's the fact that they can trace their lineage and their early Christian roots to all these places, and it's just right there. So it's also like, oh, they might have something like real here, authentic about their claim. So it is interesting to think about as far as like where the ark actually sits.
Yeah.
Kind of like what we were talking about last podcast with Gilgamesh about like all these things that actually have been there forever that are finally just being unveiled. It's like, I wonder if it ever does, if the ark will like actually ever come up.
Yeah,
So-
I've seen arguments for the other side of that too, saying that actually Israel has had it for a long time and they have it there. I've heard America has it, like very much like along with the Indiana Jones narrative, the movie plot, not necessarily in that way, but in the idea that we somehow came across it. Also heard, that some people theorize that actually Saudi has it and it's actually inside the black box that everybody goes around at Hajj, and that's actually connected to that concept. None of those things obviously have been validated or even claimed by Islam, but it is one of those things where you're like, okay, this is interesting because this was a thing, a physical representation, obviously written about it, and more than just in the biblical narrative. But it is one of those things where it's like we're not sure modern day, common knowledge. No one knows where it's at.
Yeah.
Or else it would be one of these things that everybody would want to go see, myself included.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, I want to go. Let's
100%.
go. Let's take a look at this box, baby. I want to go.
Yeah.
So it'd be really interesting to see what that looks like, how that's going to work out in the future. But we know that it talks about how those sacrifices and those things will come back online at some point in the future in Israel, and so one would only make the assumption that also the Ark of the Covenant would be there at the Temple Mount in a restored temple in order for those things to happen. So we'll see what happens with that. One of the Christian podcasters is kind of talking about things is a guy named John Rush, and he's actually was talking about this content idea that's saying, hey, Christian content creators, they should actually be someone who's connected to a local church. And he was saying, because if they're not, then they're in no way someone that you can validate who they are, what they believe, where they're at. And so they're very nebulous. So they have no actual authority because they're not under authority and not in any way connected to anybody who is proven in the Christian space. What's your take on that?
I mean, I think that statement is very loaded within and of itself, because you ask a lot of different Christians about that and you'll get a lot of different perspectives. Like, because so many of like the Christians in the big kind of virtual space that are really popular right now are Protestant, a lot of Orthodox and Catholic people would tell you that unless they do all this under the authority of a priest, then they're spreading like a heretic gospel.
Right.
And
vice versa, Protestants to Catholics.
Well, yeah. And so it's all kind of a mess there. But as far as like, kind of to his point, I do understand where he's coming from and saying that if you're not fully tied to like your local church, or at least to a church that is like close to where you live, like most of the year or something like that, then it doesn't really make sense for you to come out and be making all these claims about like what people should do, what they should follow, because you yourself aren't really attached to a definitive body. But at the same time, it also kind of like begs the question, because we read about, because in some way they're almost acting like missionaries, but I do understand what he means about having like a home base, because most of the popular speakers that we see, like like Bryce Crawford or like Cliff and Stuart Connectley will fly out a lot and be at like a bunch of different events, like speaking and doing things like that.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure they do have home churches. I know like Cliff himself is a pastor, and I think Stuart is also a pastor. So for that aspect, it makes sense because they just kind of fly out like during the week and then come back on the weekends. But yeah, as far as like for him to make that claim is definitely true, because I think unless you really tie into a body, then you're kind of just almost acting as your own priest, because you kind of just get to interpret the words of scripture however you want and then tell people how to live, when you yourself aren't really engaging with the body of Christ in partaking in sacrament or in doing any of that thing. So
like living in the community of faith.
Exactly. I mean, that's what we're called to do. That's why we established a church in the first place. So it's like, I think his main concern with it is the fact that it takes the approach of like, oh, it's my relationship with God. So then the divine inspiration that's given to me should be able to be applied to you in your situation, but I'm called to a different role. And I think that kind of assumes something over a mantle of priesthood or like a pastoral calling within the mind of some people.
Right.
So that's why it gets kind of dangerous to elevate yourself to that position. So I understand where he's coming from, and I definitely agree with what he's saying.
Whereas I would say a lot of people, in order to become a pastor, you have to come in through some kind of thought process of becoming ordained for that process. In our case, it's a 3-tiered system within the Assemblies of God, which our church is a part of the fellowship there, where you come in and you get your certified level, you get a licensing level, and each one of those has incremental learning and now mentorship that's involved in it. And then you go and you have to wait 2 years and in order to get your ordination. Some places within the structure of the place will not allow you to serve in certain roles unless you're ordained.
Mm-hmm.
Some places won't allow you to lead a church unless you're ordained, so not just the basic level stuff. Now, you can marry people, you can do a bunch of other things with your first levels of credentials, but you're working up towards it. So the point is, if you're just on the line and just like as a Christ follower, just saying stuff, which is good. I mean, using your testimony is really powerful. But when you start to get in the teaching side of something, people are like, okay, I want to know who you're connected to.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I want to know who taught you this. Like, where is this coming from? Like, what theology school did you go to?
Mm-hmm.
Are you someone that's out of here? Are you out of there? Like, where are you connected to? Who is speaking into your life that you learn this from? And I think that's kind of his point, is that once you're tied to something or grounded to something, people have a better understanding of who you are and what your perspective is, your worldview. Mm-hmm. And so that was my conversation so often with friends who were kind of coming out, especially in my early 20s. I had several people who were like, they saw us as missionaries going and traveling and speaking and fundraising. And I told them, listen, yeah, we are doing those things, but we are backed by this organization who says that, because we had to apply and walk through all those tiers and do all these interviews, et cetera, to get greenlit to say, yes, we can be someone who goes out underneath this name within this organization to do these things. That's what opened the door for us, is that opportunity. Now, we had to go make those connections ourselves. We had, the partnership's all person to person.
Yeah.
Nobody's making you do anything. Nobody has to do that.
Yeah.
Like, you don't deserve it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So nobody owes you, but it is one of those things where it does validate who you are. Now, that's the question I think he's trying to get to, is like, hey, without doing that, you're just out on your own doing whatever. And there's no community of faith you're tied to. There's no other thing. So there's no tether for you back to anything. So you can go way, way off and lead a whole bunch of people astray if you're not careful. So Angus, what do you think, man?
I agree with everything that you're saying and that you guys are saying. I think that it's really important for everybody, really, in the space, in the kingdom space, to have somebody over them. Because as a pastor, I still have you as my pastor. Even though you're the pastor of this church, you still have people that you've given
Pastor
authority.
Jeff is my pastor, right?
Yeah, to speak into your life and counselors and things like that. And so if you're an influencer like that, and you don't have somebody to speak into your life and bring correction and things like that, because it's very easy to see, especially once you get on social media, it's very easy to get to see through one lens.
That's right. Yeah.
And if you start speaking through one lens, you can hurt a lot of people.
Yeah.
And you can do a lot more damage. And if you've got nobody to speak into you, you end up with some of these people who are kind of a bull in a china shop. Because there are some people who are so spiritually fragile that they're looking for something, and if they hear a 30-second soundbite from you that answers that one question, but all the rest of your stuff kind of leads them in a poor direction. And they've got nobody, there's no recourse. There's no way to stop that from continuing to happen. And so I think it is really important. It's kind of like, when you first start dating somebody and they say that they're a Christian, well, ask them what their testimony is. Yeah. Because that's a sorting question.
Yeah, where do you go to church?
Exactly. Yeah. I know there have been a lot of people that I love the things that they say, and then you go and you take a look at their page to get more of that same stuff, and it's like, oh, that was definitely a one-off.
Right.
And that was an outlier in their thought process.
Right.
And so there are people too that they may align with you on one topic, scripturally or whatever, but their theology is way off base. And if you accept their methodology of thinking and teaching based off of that one nugget that they gave you,
right,
you could be in a world of hurt. And and so I think that we need to be very cautious of who we allow into our lives, but also when we see people who are untethered, just say, hey, who are you connected to?
Get connected.
Get connected. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, I agree with you. I think John, in his point in asking that question, was he gave an example of Forrest Frank. And Forrest Frank is like someone who's obviously an artist. And he was like, I didn't know who Forrest was. I didn't know where he was coming from. His stuff's pretty, upbeat and encouraging in a general sense. He's like, but I really liked whenever he was saying, hey, I was going through this tough time. I went and met with my pastor. And he started, whenever Forrest is saying saying this testimony of his own life. Now, we don't know Forrest's pastor. I don't even know what church he goes to. But the point was the fact that he is connected, even though he's an artist traveling around and stuff, he's connected back to a home church. Man, so powerful. You and I, Angus and I, we got to go and be a part of an art conference back. We've been to a couple of art events and going to these different places. Some of those guys have become names. Some of those guys are really big artists now. And we get to see them kind of in their home church whenever they're serving right there locally. And that's really powerful, man. You're like, oh, I know you're connected to. Yeah. You're connected right here. You know what I mean? Or you're connected to these guys. And that's been very helpful because then you understand kind of their worldview and where they're coming from.
Well, and we tend to have this view in America that once you get to a certain point, you answer to no one.
Right.
And so there's this, so a lot of people have that as the goal, to get to the top where they no longer have to answer.
Right.
Some people that only comes with age, not until you're 80,
Sure.
But for other people, that's what they're searching for, is to be able to get to that place. And that's a dangerous place to be when you've got nobody to check you.
That's true. And I think that is the shift that you see so often between young people and older people as they get older, is that as people go in their seniority and control over their own life, maybe they own their own business, they own their own things, they can dictate their own time, they understand that trading their time for value or effort or whatever that is, and all those other pieces, well, then the people that are in politics are the people that are lording over them because they can control them still. And so then they start to really care about things like politics. And so it's interesting how, if a person is not geared in faith, then politics becomes their faith. Yeah. And identity in a political party becomes their religion. And so we've seen that so many times. So I think it is important who you're connected with and how you're living that life out. So the Lord help each one of us to be a model of what that is.
Amen.
One of the sad things that we've seen recently, and talking about our commitment to Christ, there has been a surge of arson against churches in the UK. In fact, it's reported that there is even 150 churches that have been set on fire in this past year, which is heartbreaking to hear. And a lot of it's been done by radical people who are against Christianity, and especially in the surge of that within places like London or the greater populations, where a lot of these churches have been set on fire. It's really, really sad. Similarly, a church recently in Montreal was also one of the oldest churches in Canada, was also set on fire and burnt. It was a very massive church, and it looks like it's probably a total loss. And I mean, what a heartbreaking thing. It reminds me very much of what happened in Notre Dame whenever it was set on fire. And I remember, now I haven't been back, though I've been to France since then recently. I got a chance to go and be there this last October just for a day in and out of Paris. I get to see Notre Dame from a distance and see it and restored was great. I spent so many times going and taking people into Notre Dame, and to think about the rose windows and all that stuff melted away is so sad, man. It just breaks my heart when I saw the fires going on back when it was burning. I was like, oh no. And they did a great job to restore it and all the other efforts that they put towards that. But that kind of effort is not happening in these other places. This is just going to be a loss. And I don't know if it's the people are trying to do this intentionally because they're trying to burn down the influence in those areas or what. But it's one of those things that really broke my heart when I heard that over 150 churches have been burned. You guys heard any of this kind of stuff? The persecution that's been happening there so much in the UK?
I hadn't heard so much about the church burnings and things, but I'm praying that with it, that it doesn't have the effect that they want, which is to have Christ disappear, that it would have the opposite effect.
Yeah.
Because what we know is that the persecuted church will grow.
Yep.
And so I just pray that it would have the opposite effect.
Yep.
That the Lord would be lifted and glorified, by the burning of these churches. That it would be
And beauty from ashes, literally.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Wow.
Exactly. So I think that it's it's horrible, and I hope that they catch these people and it comes to a stop. But at the same time, I just pray that the Lord will do what He's going to do and use this for His glory and His purposes.
Absolutely. Javen, you see a lot of kind of the younger activist generation is the ones that are responsible for most of this kind of stuff. What do you think? Why do you think people rationalize doing things like this?
I mean, I don't know. As far as rationalizing, it just seems like the way that everybody's kind of heading towards now is that anything that takes a firm stance in the ground upon like not moving on the ways that social influence is kind of headed towards, like more just cultural acceptance and the fact that coexist. Like that's literally a perfect way to
talking about the bumper sticker version
exactly.
of coexist. Yeah.
That's like a perfect way to understand kind of what Gen Z is moving towards as a whole as far as what we want politically. But it's interesting because despite that being what the majority wants, I think kind of to Angus's point that there is a really good lesson to be learned here. And for me, it's just kind of like after seeing all these churches be burned, it's that I think in some ways, it's almost like the Lord's calling the church to take a harder stand in the ground than we are, because we've seen so much of the new generation that comes up try to be accepting of things that are pushing back against what for hundreds and thousands of years, what we viewed it as like canonically and scripturally wrong, like just things that are like entirely against scripture. We're trying to rationalize in accordance with acceptance of other people and belief systems and cultures and things like that, that just inherently go against the Bible. So I think because people aren't willing to take a stand like that, we see things like this happening. Now, obviously, that's not to say that it's the fault of the Christians for letting the church burn. That's ridiculous, because it is just out of the heinousness of somebody else to do this. But it's not a coincidence that this is being accelerated because in spaces where we see that populations are kind of losing the heart of what it means to be Christian, and formerly Christian countries that are kind of being atmospheres for where people can coexist and like accepting of other people. The socialistic movement that we see out of all these places that are like pushing for social acceptance of everything are the ones that most of this is happening to. Whereas countries that have like firmly stood within the foundation of Christianity,
Poland,
exactly,
thriving,
haven't seen this. And so it's interesting.
It is, man, and heaven help us to be those that are living the values that make sense. And we realize that the church is not a building, but it's so sad to see, facilities that are dedicated to the existence of the church and the community gathering be burnt in this way. And I'll tell you that if it was done to other religious structures, they would not be held in the same way. Yeah. So I think it's the forgiveness aspect of Christianity that somehow allows people just to kind of bypass and think it's okay. Whereas in other situations where that's not the response they would have, there would be a lot more action. So heaven help us to keep our witness, but also see justice happen.
Amen.
One of the things that we saw recently I thought was really interesting is reported that the governor of Puerto Rico signed into law that unborn babies are recognized as human beings. Have you guys seen this?
That's awesome. No, I hadn't seen that.
Yeah.
That was a really powerful thing, especially from our perspective as Christ followers, seeing life start at conception and talking about that. We see that in Jeremiah. We see it in many places in Scripture. The Lord knows us. He knows us from the time we were in our mother's womb. He knows and has a plan and a purpose for us, and we talk about that often. So I think it's powerful to see Puerto Rico's governor, for her to sign something like this is really powerful. Obviously, it would put a stop to abortion and all these other things that are against the heart of God and killing unborn babies. It's very much in alignment, and it opens the door for all of these other things that we've seen happen within the Epstein files and other things. I mean, a lot of behind the scenes, secret camera kind of things we've seen where at Planned Parenthood facilities or at abortion facilities, that's very much where they're going and farming parts of babies and all sorts of other stuff. Just terrible, evil things. Yeah. And so see the stop to that, I thought was really powerful. So kudos to her. The Lord
Yeah.
give her strength and trying in keeping that line for them and for the people.
Amen.
Yeah.
One of the things that we've seen also is a shift, as we were talking about recently, in Europe demographics, and it's shifting through birth rate. So that's a really interesting thing. We talked about that a lot in the past, even as we lived in Europe and other places like that. Now we've lived in the Middle East. We have friends that are Muslim, all sorts of things. So we value people as people first and foremost, of every walk of life, of every decision they're making. However, we as Christ followers would love for every person to become a Christ follower, and for people that believe other things, their ambition is to change the hearts of other people too. So we're in this kind of gridlock against each other in theology and in mentality, though we value each other as people. But because there are more people who are coming to these countries that actually have more children per ratio, they were just doing the math, and it looks like most of Europe, especially the bigger Western countries, will shift to being a Islamic majority here before 2035. That's a very interesting thing. Jim, you've seen a little bit of that change happen.
Yeah.
What do you think as far as on that lines?
I mean, it's not surprising. Kind of to what I was saying earlier, the effect of like the fact that Europe is kind of changing to become so socially accepting of everybody, and with that comes a lot of Islamic or Muslim immigrants that are coming in from these other countries, these war-torn countries that are looking for a better life, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But it's the fact that when you start changing like all the laws and things to kind of accommodate that, then this will naturally follow.
So like radical Islam implementation.
Yeah, exactly. And because
which Muslim Middle Eastern countries are rejecting.
Yeah, exactly.
They will not allow people from these different ethnicities, from these different groups, or even from those political parties to even enter their country.
Yeah. And it's not to say that like every country is going to fall under Sharia law or something like that, but it's just we do see influences of that because of the cultural impact that it's having, where all these immigrants are coming in and then having more kids because they have a better way of life and because they set themselves up with stable jobs, like stable family, stable career, things for their kids to thrive and succeed. Whereas a big majority of people that have been culturally Western European or even like American are not having as many kids anymore because of just the awkwardness and age of technology, and also the fact that like people just are kind of rejecting the family model as a whole, which is so sad. Yeah. But whereas Islam is like very much embracing that and being like, no, we need to have as many kids as possible.
Right, because they value children.
Yeah, exactly. So then you also see that they're logically going to be the people that have the most accelerated birth rate out of all these other people and religious groups. So eventually they'll make up a majority as far as like who religiously identifies with being Muslim, being Christian, being atheist, agnostic, et cetera, et cetera. So, and the fact that most of it's happening in like the UK and in Paris, just it makes all the sense in the world. So I'm not personally surprised by it, but I am surprised that 2035 is like as quick of a date as they're saying it is, because that's like less than 10 years.
Less than 10 years.
Yeah.
The math is actually in their favor for that very thing. And I'll say this, if you have an agnostic and an atheist society, which is a majority of Europe and has been for a long time, they do not value children or life that's not about themselves in any other way. So bringing people in there that would take resources away from their own goals and ambitions, we've seen it ourselves where lots of people did not have a lot of kids, or if they did have kids, it was people who actually were wealthy that figured it out, that actually, oh, my value is beyond what I can do, and so I'm going to have children, and this can be something valuable here. And so we did see that shift, and we have lots of friends that are Muslim that have actually really good values in their family, so they're not doing any of this crazy outside of the box kind of stuff that happens. But one of the things that they are seeing is the more radical side of Islam, and people that are running off these other hadiths and all this other stuff that is not in the value for family. They're actually doing things that's very much against the current laws. So they're doing stuff like, child marriage and other things like that. Seeing, a girl, as soon as she goes through puberty, then she's okay to marry, and she's okay. That's a green light for her to get married and for people to do that. And there's lots of cases of people doing that. Whereas law, even whenever we were in Egypt, there was law that said there, that they could go and have a Christian girl and have her come and become Muslim, and they could essentially take her and have her become Muslim, and that's okay. And so there was like weird, like old rules that didn't really function that way, but in off cases did function that way. And so that's why people were very afraid, whenever they had a Christian daughter who got to that age, they were afraid of what could happen with her, even as she just went about her daily stuff. So, that kind of shift. Now, that's not what you'd see in other places necessarily across the Middle East, but it was in some cases, like what was happening. To see that be brought into Europe, it's a clash of two different thought processes, two different worldviews. It's all those things coming to a head. So the shift and the allegiance of who's in control of all the big cities, a lot of them are now Muslim governors and other things like that. And so their value system is going to be different. Now, it's interesting because a lot of their value on family aligns with ours is. And so those things are similar. But the idea of Sharia law, the idea of other things like that, which essentially is their agenda for some. It is actually on the table. And I think that's why people were freaking about Mamdani and other things in New York City, thinking he's going to be able to somehow roll this out here. I'm like, no, we have tons of people who are anti-God here. It doesn't matter how you pray to God. No. They're not going to be for you. We're very still much of an agnostic nation. Yeah. And so I don't see that happening here. Whereas Europe, different story. Angus, what do you think, man?
Well, I don't know as far as the seeing it here part, because the way I see it is it's not necessarily a political argument. It's a mathematical.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's not political. Yeah,
and that's the thing is, like, at a certain point, while there can be resistance to that, at a certain point, once you're no longer the majority,
right?
It's really hard for you to dictate things, and and what we know by birth rates and all that, the math doesn't lie. I mean, right. the statistics and what people talk about, that could be the lie. But when you look at different things, for example, like China, how they're saying that there's no way their numbers can be like this because of the one-child policy.
Right.
That if everybody was obeying it, their numbers just don't work out.
Don't work out, right.
Same.
So they're not 1.1 billion. They're actually more likely 650,000 or something like that.
Right. So the same thing with this. If Muslims are coming into an area, the majority of them could be peace-loving and have all of that. But it's the way I see it is, like, if you've got a car full of people and the majority of those people are all Americans,
right? And
then eventually you start switching. Let's go with a bus, because
more seats.
But and then you start to replace where the bus has more Muslims on it. Well, then you switch the lane. The lane change isn't the big change. It's when they change the driver,
right? Sure.
And so once we've switched from American values and this to more Muslim things, which may seem innocuous, it's when the leadership changes.
That's absolutely right.
And that's when it becomes the problem.
That's right.
And at a certain point, when it's a numbers thing, you don't necessarily have the choice.
Yeah.
And so you have to be aware. And so we all have to be, it's not, we're not in conflict,
right?
But we just do have to be aware that if you want to maintain your way of life, you have to have a certain population. Otherwise, the bigger ones are going to come in and tell you what to do.
Well, and I'll tell you, it's interesting. We'll go back to the same thing with demographic change, but even from a perspective of those that lived under different things, we've lived in different things. So we've had people who were more socialist. We've had other things. We lived in France. You have like a socialist president. You have these other kind of presidents. We go and live in the Middle East. It's obviously a more authoritative figure, though they are voted in. And so I think about El-Sisi. El-Sisi was fair and governed in a way with values that aligned way more than mine than my American president, Biden, whenever I got back. And so that was interesting. Though we came back into Trump, Biden took power after we got back. And I'm like, actually, the guy I was with in the Middle East was more in alignment with my values than this guy, even though that guy is not a Christian.
Yeah.
And is actually, he's showed more support to the Christians and to other things than the guy who's running my country, who's supposed to be based on Christian ethics. So it's very interesting to see it that way. So that's why I mean, like, we value people. We can disagree with their thought process and their religion, but as people, they actually hold values closer to ourselves than even others. So it's really interesting as that regard. And that's where you see, American Protestant Christians who will align themselves politically with people who are Mormon or other things, even though we don't believe the same, because they're like, well, he's closer to us in our values. So they're like, oh yeah, Mitt Romney's my guy. You're like, wait, what? You know what I mean? In any other context, this wouldn't be true, but it's kind of like the enemy versus the enemy that you disagree with completely. So it's one of those kind of deals. And so it is really interesting. Demographically changing, America has the same problem, but for a different reason, because our rules are different than Europe. Europe, you have to become, the only way to be a citizen is to be a direct descendant, meaning that you have to have, it's either your grandparents or less. So some places it has to be your parent to be, they have to be a citizen for you to become a citizen. So you could be born wherever, but if you're born to a citizen, then you can become a citizen. Just being born in the property doesn't mean anything. So if you're born in France forever, like for example, so Shiloh was born in France, she's not naturally a French citizen. You actually have to go through the system in at least half of your 18 years as a minor, and then have to pass French, fluency tests and history tests, just like you're becoming a citizen otherwise. So there's a naturalization process, or born to a citizen to become a citizen. So America doesn't have that rule. We have, which is like the land of America, meaning being within the United States property makes you a citizen, which is a very strange rule.
Yeah.
The problem is that people are now, they're figuring this out. And I guess for a long time now, which I didn't realize, was that there are a big amount of businesses that are set up in California to facilitate surrogate mothers to actually be inseminated with Chinese babies. So Chinese mothers who are American citizens who are carrying to fruition the child who is now born as an American citizen, though they're ethnically Chinese from two Chinese parents. Then that child is taken back to China, raised in China, but whenever they come voting age, they're American.
Yeah.
So they can hold American office, because there's no stipulation saying that you grew up somewhere else that you can't come and be here, because they are American, born to an American parent here in America.
Yeah.
So this is actually done. The math, some people were saying, oh, it's millions. Some people were saying it's 100,000. I know one report was saying, one of the guys that facilitates it says, oh, I have 100 children.
Yeah.
Because he's a rich guy. So he's paid for 100 women to surrogate his children. So he has 100 children that are being raised in China that are American citizens.
Yeah.
And so that's an interesting thing. That's a loophole for our own situation, because they're playing long game, not short game.
Oh,
we don't have
100%.
a whole bunch of like American babies being born in China to take over.
Right. Well, and their system doesn't even allow for that.
Correct.
And no other system really
No.
on the planet allows for this kind of ridiculousness, which is, it's wild to me that it's like, we all see this, the fence is wide open.
Sure.
And nobody's guarding it.
Right. And we want people from other countries to come, but we want them to come and be a part of the process and become online. And I think that needs to get fixed as far as the process for people to come in, because I've had to deal with that stuff forever. It's a nightmare. But to your point.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, the reality is it doesn't matter how many.
Right.
Because all it takes is one to become president.
Correct.
And then you've got Manchurian candidate, you've got this a sleeper, a puppet president, and so like that's a very real concern, because they are playing the long game. Now it's cute that China's having they're having babies here or whatever, but those babies are going to become business leaders and all of this stuff. And I mean, they're already buying farmland, and they're not dumb.
No.
And they're using our system against us.
Right.
And so we've got to wake up and get smart to what they're doing, or they're just going to legally take us over.
Yeah, I think of a Korean American guy as a great example of this. There's a guy, he's an American guy, so he grew up in America, right? This guy's name, I think it's Johnny Kim. He is currently an astronaut. He grew up, I think California, I think is where he says his heritage is Korean. But he grew up there, Navy SEAL. I mean, bad guy. Like he was wearing the Punisher out thing, served with teams and all this stuff. When he got done with teams in the Navy, he actually went to Harvard Medical School, became a doctor. Then now he's an astronaut with NASA. So I've seen people using him as a meme, because it's like, this guy is just crushing life, bro. Like everything you've ever wanted to be. You want to be a tough guy? He's the toughest of the tough guys. Yeah. You want to be a super smart, high resolve person? Oh, he went to Harvard and became a doctor, and he's an astronaut. It's like, dude, you can't compare to this guy. I don't care who you are.
Making it possible for every Asian out there.
That's right. To be their mom, to be proud of him, because they're not Johnny Kim's mom. Yeah, exactly. But I mean, he's a perfect example of somebody who, obviously I don't know where he's at politically, but I mean, on the face of what he's done, you're like, oh, dude, this guy's America, baby. I love him. I don't care his ethnicity. He's America. But if he had some kind of agenda, which I don't think he does, but if he had some kind of agenda, he could go and be like, oh, suddenly, oh, yeah, we're going to fight everything out for Korea. Like, we're taking out North Korea today. He gets voted into day 2. He's like, North Korea is the enemy. We're like, oh, you've been sitting on this.
Yeah.
Which is, there's a lot of people like that. It doesn't have to do anything with his ethnicity. There's a lot of people who have that kind of plan.
Yeah.
But that being said, then it goes back to this other shift where it's like, hey, we're for people coming and being a part, but we want them to become a part of what's happening here, not to take their agenda from some other place and try to usurp what we're doing here, which is some of the agenda of the extreme people that are coming in Islam. That's some of the things that we see politically with that's thought process with China. So we'll see. I'd love to go. I want to go experience China. I want to experience the place, the culture. see this stuff. We have friends who are Chinese. We believe in them. We have friends who are Christ followers who are in China, praying for them and want them to thrive. So it has nothing to do with the ethnicity side. It's the political side of the ambition of the change. I'm like, ooh, better pay attention.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
we need to fix that. We need to make it easier for people to come and get involved and connect to us in the right way, because I've had to navigate a ton of bureaucracy and getting visas and all those other things. It is a nightmare. And so I can only imagine what it is to go here. We've walked with lots of friends through that process here. They're trying to get their green card. They're trying to get papers to do the things right. Culturally, they're American. They functioned here a long time. They found themselves here, undocumented as a young child, and they're trying to get right. And so it's like, man, we need to fix that problem, and then fix the doors that create that problem.
Yeah.
And then everybody would play in the same field. So then you can't talk about ethnicity in that way, because that's being racist. So because everyone will go through the right door. So
Yeah.
the Lord help us, man, in figuring that stuff out.
Yeah.
I know it's not within our faith stuff, because the Lord knows where he's going to come back to, and it isn't on this continent.
Yeah.
So, we have that perspective for sure. Hey, one of the cool things that we saw was some of these sports figures are giving their faith and telling their testimony. One of those is the number one golfer in golf, Mr. Javan.
Scotty
Scheffler, the man, the myth, the legend. He is tearing it up recently. Saw a video, I sent it to you, him sharing his testimony of Christ in college. You get a chance to see it?
I did not. I think I've heard him talk about it before, though.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great. Like, he's also shared, I think he was playing around with Grant Horvat once about, like, I think he's a part of what's like the golfer Christian organization that they have.
There's a few.
Yeah, he's like a supporter of that, I think, because he's obviously not in college anymore. But
right, sure.
Yeah, but I mean, it's great. And to see him be someone that's like so vocal about his faith is great. And I think the fact that he is world number one, and the fact that he plays with like such a heart and attitude of love for his family, and that he really, in essence, doesn't like care about his career as like the defining factor for who he is, but he's fully convinced of his identity in Christ and knows who he belongs to. So within that sense, he just like plays freely and doesn't really like care, because one tournament loss isn't going to define who he is.
Right.
So he just gets back and plays with like the same ambition and fervency that he does, because he feels that that's the call that God's put on his life, and that's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's just been awesome to see him kind of be vocal about that, especially in a space where we see like so much money being poured into these people that they start to become like extremely self-conceited and value themselves more than maybe they actually like should be. But yeah, so
you're not saying about that to any of his colleagues on the PGA Tour, are you?
No,
not
nothing
that.
Nothing like that. No, not at all.
No, powerful to see him. Man, we got to see Scotty play, just a few weeks ago when he was here in Phoenix.
Yeah.
And get a chance to see him play. It was really cool. See his caddy, Ted Scott, it does a thing he does Sunday school on his Instagram and does a message about faith, because they're both men of faith. So on Sunday morning, which is usually the last round for the golf tournaments, is Sunday morning. So he's doing a thing early Sunday morning, talking about faith, telling about some kind of testimony. And that's really powerful to use your testimony for the Lord. So I appreciate that Scotty's doing that. I appreciate that Ted is doing that. And it's pretty cool to see, like Grant Horvat. Grant Horvat is an influencer, golf influencer, somebody who played college level but has got really good and is very kind of famous for his upbeat attitude and his approach to golf. His game is beautiful. But he has a testimony and he gives glory to God. And that's really powerful. I think even when he was a part of Good, which is an online golf group, which have merchandise and all sorts of stuff now, he was really instrumental there. You could see his influence on those other guys and his testimony and encouraging them to live for Christ as well. And there's several guys in that group that are also Christ followers and more vocal about their faith, which is pretty cool too. So I'm encouraged to see some of that stuff. Have you followed any of these guys in the golf realm? It's not necessarily your sport.
No, golf, it hasn't been. But it is really neat to see these influencers and these people who have a platform to use it for good.
Yeah.
And so I do appreciate that.
That's cool.
So, yeah.
So you don't have anybody that's like a professional bagpipe player or something?
No.
Shout out all the Scottish people in the world. Another one that's in line here was actually Coach Mike McDonald. He is the Seattle Seahawks coach, and they just won the Super Bowl recently. And I love his statement here. He said, God called me to be a coach. That's what he was saying, is I'm living my purpose. Similar to what Scotty was saying, is that I'm doing this job as the utmost of my ability to give glory to God for what's going on. And I love that. He just was like very genuine. He was like, no, You know, it's about my faith in God, and similar to Scotty. Scotty's like, you know, he's sponsored by Rolex and Nike and all these
he doesn't care.
huge things.
No.
He's like, you know, my value is not whether or not I make this. My value is found in Christ and in my family, and that's what I play for. And so I'm thankful for these other people that come alongside me, empower me to do this stuff. I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful to win this, but this doesn't define me as who I am. And that's so gangster. I love that so much. Because it just turns all the accolades back to Jesus. Yeah. What do you guys think? Seahawks, are they anointed by God because of Mike?
Yeah. Well, I don't know about all that, but what I do appreciate about the way that they're sharing their faith in this is that it's not like at the Grammys where it's you know, thank you God and all this for this award. It's you know, that's just a portion of who they are, and so I appreciate that. And I pray that we see more of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I also hope that, you know, our team gets somebody anointed like Mike, so we can win too. Javen, what do you think, man? Somebody giving testimony, or are you just shaking your head at the Cardinals?
I know, I'm shaking my head at the Cardinals because at this rate, we're probably never going to win a Super Bowl. Hey, unless we like re-franchise, leave Arizona and then come back to Arizona.
Bring Mike McDonald over?
I don't know, something. Even Mike McDonald could save our poverty franchise, dude. It's so bad. But
how dare you?
No, it's great. It's great to see Mike McDonald. Like I did see the clip they were talking about, and it's awesome because like for him, it's not like he was like a player that gradually became a coach. I think he started from like a really low tier coaching or staffing position, something like that,
worked his way up.
and then really like, but in a super quick manner. I think he's like one of the youngest active head coaches in the NFL right now.
Early 40s?
Yeah, something like that. But either
30s.
way, yeah. I think he's in his 30s or something like that, which is pretty crazy.
Crazy.
Because most of the guys are like older and had been people that had played before and then just like worked their way up.
Right.
But no, for him, it's been awesome. And he's definitely helped change the culture within the Seattle locker room.
Yeah, some of those guys are praying before the games and stuff. Every game.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's that's been great to kind of see like, not only has he done that in terms of like actually been very vocal about his faith with the fan base and things like that, but he's also helped bring that in his actions towards the player base that he sees every single day. And then he interacts with like almost the entirety of the year. So it's awesome to see that he is not only giving glory to God and fulfilling what he longs to do and what he knows he's been called to do, but he obviously just does it with excellence. And that's awesome to see.
Yeah, I love it so much. I think it's really cool. Shifting a little bit here, but it's really interesting. We were talking about, it's been a few months ago when we were talking about some of this, talking about being buried versus being cremated. Angus, you sent me a video, wildness, man. Somebody had lost their mother and she had been cremated. Her ashes were on their piano. Well, their 2-year-old got to the ashes. And so their 2-year-old was playing in the ashes and was eating the ashes.
Oh my God.
You want to talk about it?
Well, that was
so crazy,
that was
man.
pretty much it. It was just kind of this idea that, you know, this video was serve a purpose later on in life. And so it just showed a picture of this little girl as she's
like 2, maybe 3.
Yeah, she's covered in ashes. And the mom is like, that was my mom.
She was like eating them. You know, to her, it's just like sand. You know what I mean? She's not really thinking about it.
Yeah.
And it's everywhere, all over this piano. So they're literally with the vacuum out, vacuuming up the ashes, vacuuming up grandma on the thing. We were like, dude, this is wild. Oh, it's so, it's one of those things that you're like, this is terrible. And it makes you laugh because you're like, this is insane. Yeah. And both the parents were laughing. I mean, even the mom who lost her mom was just like,
what can you do?
That's grandma.
Yeah.
It's so dark, man. I'm like, what? But, you know, what we know about that is that to be absent from the body, we're present with the Lord. So the idea is that, you know, she's no longer in those ashes. Obviously, it is her remains, but the point is that she's no longer there.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things that you're like, oh, man, you want to respect. Obviously, we have hold in high respect and all those things. But, yeah, dude, that's a hard one to come back from. Hard one. Yeah, man, crazy. One of the C's we talk about is creativity, and we've talked a lot about tech and about the advancement of technology, especially recently in these last couple of years. Has been crazy how fast things have been developing. We talked about Seedance and how Hollywood-style things are being made in one day. Well, Seedance 2.0 came out, and it's even better than the one before. You guys talked a little bit about some of the things you've seen. Did you see any of those videos? I know you talked about the cat one coming out of the water. Yeah. Godzilla. Were there other ones that you saw?
Nah, I think it was just the cat one. There might have been like a Superman and I want to say like a Batman fight that wasn't taken from a movie. It was just
Right.
like artificially made with like their more comic book version style.
Yes.
But like portrayed as real people. So it was pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, it looks pretty realistic. Obviously, you can kind of tell that it's AI just because there's a little bit of flaws here and there. And it doesn't look like entirely authentic. But once again, if this is like one of the earliest implementations,
done
of
in a
this,
few days.
Yeah, you think about this in like a couple years from now, which is probably going to go by like that.
Right.
Then this kind of technology is just going to be absolutely insane in terms of not only movie making, but also like gauging the authenticity of what you're watching. You're like, wait, is this actually an AI movie, or is this like
Everything will be surreal.
Exactly. Yeah. So
at what point will we really be in, one of those like Ready Player One scenarios where you're living, in the metaverse or whatever it is? It's very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, that's what Elon's talked about forever.
Yeah, for a long time.
Yeah. Is that we're probably already there, which I don't know about all that. But.
All right. Since it's the case, and you have, like we showed on Sunday, even iterations of people taking that classic Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift scene where Han is leaning on his car and the guy walks out and sees him, and it's that whole thing. And then now they're replacing Han leaning on different stuff we talked about on Sunday. Yeah. People made him on a tractor or next to a burro. They put him next to, then they replaced him altogether, and now it's Doc Brown next to the DeLorean. Okay, so if you could pick any two people to be like in a big fight scene that you from across any movies, what do you guys think? Anybody that you'd be like, oh, this would be so sick to see them doing that? Maybe like a Neo versus the Hulk. You know what I mean? Like something dynamic, or even.
I think Leonidas from 300.
Oof.
And I'm trying to think of who to.
Oh, they had him. It was him and Maximus from Gladiator. They had that rolled out. I saw something like that. I saw also where him, Leonidas, like two other people kind of in those kind of history. I think it was Achilles. It's Brad Pitt is Achilles, and they had something else. They were all doing something together. I forget what they were fighting, but they were fighting something other like element. Jay, what do you think, man? Anybody that you're like, this would be sick?
I don't know. I think my mind kind of goes to comic book characters. Like I think like as far as there's been so many superhero adaptations, but like I think a canonically accurate version of like the Wally West Flash, so like the supposed fastest one
versus
versus versus like
a streamer.
No, versus like a Batman with prep time, but like in order to like see it live. Like,
interesting.
Or we'll like see like a live action version of it.
Yeah.
Because we see like the Justice League iterations of things, but we haven't really seen like some of the really cool parts of the comic books that are like translated into actual movies yet.
Right.
So I think like actually seeing a well done fight scene would be super cool. So.
That's cool. Angus, anything? I mean, you had Leonidas there, maybe versus somebody.
No, actually, one thing that I think would be really cool to see is the Bible visualized through this.
Oh, that'd be dope.
This technology.
Same. That's where I was going.
I think that would be really neat. Sorry to jump on.
No. That's exactly it. Yeah.
But I think that would be really cool because I think for some of us, it's so hard to conceptualize the concepts in the Bible. And I think I know that with some of the things that I've seen on Instagram, just with some of the basic things that they've done, is really cool. But to see one long movie that that really hits it, that's scripturally based, I think would be incredible.
Yeah, so like give this tool to Angel Studios and the people that are doing some of this other stuff and let them rock with it.
Yeah.
I mean, even the David movie and some of these other things that came out recently, which are animation, it's more done in kind of a comic-y style thing. What so if you did it more realistic, that the battle scenes would be crazy with like David and Goliath, or even David, like David's mighty men versus the Philistines, or all those kind of big battle scenes would be wild.
Yeah.
To see. That'd be really cool to see. Any Bible story you're like, this would be awesome aside from David? That's kind of an easy one.
What's the one where it's like there was a spiritual battle between the angels and Satan's demons over the body of
fighting from that time to go till you came here for prayer? That one?
Oh no, it was over the body of some
like Moses' bones.
Yeah, exactly. I think that would be super cool just to see like a biblically accurate version of like the angel Gabriel and like what their interpretation of Lucifer would be for like from the AI's perspective, because we've seen so many iterations of it throughout like media and like even like books like in Dante's Inferno. There's like really bizarre depictions of it.
Right.
So I don't know. I think it'd be pretty cool to see as far as like what it would actually come up with. So
that'd be a wild one to see is Dante's Inferno and seeing the levels of hell and all that.
It'd be pretty crazy.
That would be a dark movie.
Yeah.
Dark movie. But interesting, it's just, man, this AI just like taking off. So it's like almost kind of like your imagination is the limit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And what are you able to funnel it in? So pretty interesting. One of the sides of one of the sides of AI that we haven't talked about right yet has been how AI, because they have now mapped and photographed so much of the Western world, they're saying if you're in the Western world, that AI can pinpoint you just based on a picture you take outside, which is terrifying. Now, we know there are some guys that are really, really good at GeoGuessr. Have you seen GeoGuessr as a game?
No, I haven't.
Javen, you've seen a little bit of it. What's that guy's name? It's super good at GeoGuessr.
I think it's Rainbolt.
Rainbolt, thank you. And he can do similar to this. He's just very good. He understands like the grasses and native grasses in places. He understands like tree lines, and he's like and can click on places. I'm like, this man had been living on this game.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you want to talk a little bit about what that looks like?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So you get the way that GeoGuessr works is they drop you in like some random location, and you have
using
like
Google Maps, Google Earth.
So you have 360 degree of vision, and you can go. I want to say you can go like a few blocks, but they give you a time limit. I want to say it's like anywhere between 30 seconds to 2 minutes, depending on what like your settings and stuff are. And your objective is just kind of just figure out where you are from the entire Earth. So you can like, and you need to pinpoint like as close as you can. I think the max amount of points you can get is like 5,000, but it's extremely hard to do.
Per round.
Yeah. You need to get within like 5 yards or something in order to get it. It's kind of ridiculous.
And Rainbolt's got like perfect scores.
Yeah.
On mini
yeah,
games.
It's crazy. But it's just because it's just so wild, and they also will blur out like some of the text that just like gives it away.
Right.
But if you understand like what some of the languages and things look like, it can help you pinpoint a little better. But this dude can like, I think one time he was looking at, it was literally like a random road in the middle of Africa that with like a dirt lot and like, I don't know, like small blades of grass like barely appearing out of the dirt. And he was just like, oh, I know where that is. And like looked it up. And he was within, I want to say, like 100 yards of the location. I was like, dude.
Right. And it's because he'll take like the path of the sun through the sky and different hemispheres. He understands like the time, like what the cloud patterns look like in places. I mean, the guy is like, he's got to be somewhere on the spectrum of knowledge, because the guy's like locked in.
Wow.
And it's really impressive to watch him do it. I mean, you can get lost watching those videos on YouTube because you're like, what? You know what I mean? You're trying to catch up with this guy. But he's just all over. But I mean, you know, some of the, I mean, if we've played it before, like we've played that game before, and to go into GeoGuessr, you can like click through and like, okay, I'm going to go here. Oh, okay. Oh yeah, Arizona license plate. Okay, you're in Arizona. Okay, that's in the United States, Southwest, blah, blah, blah. Most likely, statistically speaking, going to be in Maricopa County because half the people in our state live in this county. Okay, and then you guesstimate, you're a lot closer. So he would do some of that. But a lot of times they blur all that stuff out. AI will just take all this stuff and just put it all together and be like, oh, you're here in Avondale, Arizona at Cornerstone. You know what I mean? And just like give you the picture. And you're like, oh, that's scary.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those things where it's like, because we've mapped so many things, we're essentially eroding our privacy. So that's a very interesting side of this other stuff.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, the next a second segment of that would be that Palantir has opened this thing called Flock. And it is something where they are using scanning technology to track drivers and cars and all these things, mapping locations at every intersection. So usually there's kind of a camera that's there to indicate that there are cars there, so it will change the traffic light based on the traffic. This is a secondary camera. We have it here in our community in Maricopa County. It's already rolling, and you could see where they have the flock cameras that are up. So those things are scanning the drivers. They're scanning what car they're driving. They're indicating the car based on its color, its type, its model, any stickers or indicators on the car. So, you know, if you had a Trivium sticker on your car, they're gonna be like, oh, these people are part of Trivium school, and they have that marked, and so they can just tag all those things together to close the circuit on who is driving what car and what they're doing. Now, there's a positive thing to that, and also a very negative thing to that. So it's interesting. Celeste, my wife, she is a teaching pastor here at Cornerstone. She works for the city of Glendale, and in her role, she's privy to interact with some of the police officers and things like that. And they were sharing with her that they have had almost all the car theft like just drop off a cliff in Glendale because they track all these plates in and out of everywhere, and have for a while now, like a couple years. And they can tell you as soon as a plate hits that's reported stolen, it flags on all the cameras, and they start to track him. They pulled people over that were in the drive-through of places and just boosted them right out of the stolen cars, arrested them right there on the spot. Wow. So anybody who rolls through Glendale, they're in trouble. And they're going to do that more and more and more, because forever Arizona is known as like one of the, you know, the most biggest carjacking and car theft places, because they would steal them in here in Metro Phoenix and then drive them to Mexico, and then it's just gone.
Yeah.
So more and more of that's going to be enforced. And this is going to be the positive side of it. The negative side is the tracking everything you're doing.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, there is that positive and negative, and you have to just kind of figure out which is better. I still don't know about that.
Yeah.
I don't know which way I come down on it, because there's so many pros and cons either way. But I tend to lean on the side of I'm not for it, because it always starts off good.
Right.
It starts off with good intentions and all of these things, but just like the internet, which was meant to be a good thing.
Right.
And social media, all these things that we find, it doesn't take very long before they become an instrument of evil. And and so I'm not for this. Yeah,
the tracking side is really tough. Javen, what do you think, man? You guys tend to have a little bit different, because you guys came into where you're already being tracked kind of from birth.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is kind of like the logical progression of what's going to happen as far as like the way that technology boosts and stuff. It's just going to provide more tracking. It kind of reminds me of the Dark Knight, where Lucius kind of opens up that program and is able to see like all of Gotham City because they have everything mapped. That's basically the exact same thing as what the government can do now. It's just a little more like limited in terms of, or well, it's probably not limited, but like conceptually it would just be tied to like cameras and databases instead of like
but also
an actual
that
3D interactive map.
But also that.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, whether you like it or not, I think by being an American citizen and being tied into any sort of technology whatsoever, you kind of already give up a sense of your privacy. And I think we're just doing it for the sake of convenience. And because this is where America at large is headed, this is only going to probably continue to get worse. So even though most people of like most middle-aged to older people are against it because they grew up without technology, they're like, yeah, we can function without it. So many of people in my generation are like, no, we need technology because this is like,
I can't pay for anything.
Well, yeah, but we've also been so integrated into like incorporating it in everything in our lives that like we're so savvy and fluent in it that it just makes everything easier. If you told everybody to go off grid, even for like a month, nobody could do it anymore. And because everything's integrated through like business, as far as automation, as far as like computer logs and things like that, it's like we've come to a place where we're so technologically dependent that we can't stray away from it now. So the only conclusion is to continue to go forward. And that's part of the problem, is that because we built up a system that's so dependent on it, we can't escape it anymore.
Got it. So you're on the ramp to the digital arc, so there's no going back.
I mean, whether or not you like it, it's going to happen.
Yeah, interesting insight for sure. And I don't disagree with you. I think you're probably right. I think it's going to be scaling up more than the other. And to use that Batman analogy was a really good example, because that kind of echolocation, or obviously, as we were talking about in a previous podcast about how they're using, Bluetooth to track you and other things, or even at the beginning of this one, it's like, how that's part of what it is, the geofencing and stuff that we talked about. Man, what a huge thing. It's like that's happening more and more, not less.
There was a show called Person of Interest that kind of goes along this whole idea that they use AI cameras and everything in a program to solve crimes and all that. So it's
Jim Caviezel. Jesus from the Passion of the Christ.
Yeah, that's right. So I mean, it's already been there. So we're used to it now. So as it happens, that predictive programming that we were talking about previously.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, we just talked about on a previous podcast about Claude being used as an AI agent and how people are rolling and using Claude for their benefit. One of the things that just recently was announced was Elon Musk. Never heard of him before. He's only in the news all the time, every single day. But Elon obviously owns Tesla and Starlink and all the other pieces that are there. They're rolling out the humanoid robots and all those Optimus robots that they're rolling out, but they have their own AI called Grok. Grok can also be used across all the Teslas as well. So they have that kind of AI that's integrated into Tesla, can actually live change and do a bunch of things for you. I've seen people just talking to it like a normal sentence, and it can do all the steps you asked it to do. Hey, I need to get directions from here to Ahwatukee, and we need to stop by this mall, and I need to go and do a dry cleaner and this other stuff. And also I need to get a coffee when I'm closer to Ahwatukee. And they'll be like, great. And it just and add all these stops in between. It's just really interesting. Well, Elon is starting a new company. It's AI employees only. So it's going to be AI-based agents that are working this. The name of the company is MacroHard. So a direct shot at Microsoft. And it is a software company that's going to be employing only AI. So I thought this was interesting, as we've talked about. I mean, obviously they're going to have some engineers at the top end somewhere, but for the majority, it's going to be AI functioned only and focused only. What do you guys think about that, man? The thing we just talked about, he's running it at a big scope using Grok.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's logically this is going to happen somewhere. And Elon's always been on the side that we need to embrace whatever technology we have at the current moment. Mm-hmm. He's always looking for a way to innovate something or to get the human race somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And for him, that looks like a lot of technological incorporation so that we can elevate ourselves to the point where it's actually feasible to do those things. It is interesting to kind of see somebody that's like such a prominent figure be willing to establish something like this. How big it's going to be, I don't know.
Right.
But knowing Elon, the level that he takes for like actually scaling things, this could turn into like a decently pretty big size company.
Yeah.
So I think if you really are on the side that AI is like going to end up serving some kind of like evil overlord, this is like really alarming. And I think kind of depending on who's calling the shots for the operation, whether Elon like is fully sentient, because we've seen like in the past he's been like kind of all over the place as far as like where his mind and where his psychological state is. I mean, you might run into a lot of issues that you wouldn't expect to run into, where there's like human guidance and people to check the overhead and things like that, besides just the person that's telling the bots to do whatever they want. So it's interesting. I think it only really works. It's kind of like a monarchy, if you will. Like if the king is in check, then everything's kind of good. But if the king is like not right, then everything kind of like falls off.
So if you have a mad king, then we're all in trouble.
Basically,
Macro Hard's going to become Skynet.
We'll see. I don't know.
Angus, what do you think, man?
Yeah, I think that it has potential to move very fast. You know, I mean, just because of the fact that AI can do overnight what it takes humans, you know, so much longer to be able to accomplish. I think that once it starts getting rolling, we'll see it move faster and faster. It's just what sort of safeguards are there. And, you know, the video that I saw was just talking about, well, if it's successful or once it's successful, what does that look like in the tech industry? Because if one tech company can operate without employees, what can all the other tech companies do?
Absolutely.
And so then it'll become a race to see who, you know, and so it's talking about this could potentially be the beginning of the death of people in tech, you know, which is hundreds of billions of people around the world.
Yeah. Right.
You know, so that's, or hundreds of millions of people around the world. So, you know, there's a lot of implications with this. So we're just going to have to kind of watch and see.
That's true.
You know.
Well, I know the shot is being taken at Microsoft, which actually attached to Bill Gates. Bill Gates, before all the stuff with Epstein really came out wide, you know, he was on stuff like Jimmy Fallon, and he's talking about, there's like, oh, is there not going to be a lot of people involved? He's like, no, you're not going to really need humans for most of everything. And you're like, oh, that's great. You know, because this is the same people who are like, oh, we should probably do with less humans on the planet. Yeah, it's like, no. Hold on a second. Who says? You say?
Yeah.
The guy who's already here says this? This is not a good idea.
Yeah.
You know, so it is interesting to see that can happen and roll out. And I think that is the plan, because, you know, machines, they work 24/7, don't have a problem. And you can replace them with another machine for cheaper than you can hire someone to do it. So there will be a piece, you know, leading in the age of AI will be a challenge more than what we admit to right now. It will be very much a person with person. People skills will become an incrementally larger and more valuable skill set than people understand. Right now, that's kind of seen as moderate as a skill set. No, in the future, it will be the skill set, because your interaction with people will be something of merit for you, because people will lose skill set because of not interacting with people. And people who are good at skill set like that, I think they'll thrive. So that's going to be a value, which gives advantage to those of us who live in community with each other, because we're navigating that all the time, friction and sharpening, you know, iron sharpening iron, all those kind of things. So the Lord help us navigate a future and not live in fear. Alongside those things, we're talking about Tesla rolling out this concept with Micro Hard. Same thing for their humanoid robots. They have actually said they're shifting from making all the Tesla cars in their California plant. They're changing it to make the Optimus robots. So they're going to be rolling out that many humanoid robots. I heard people say that the ones that came across those robots, they said, in the future, you will forget that Tesla made cars.
Wow.
That's how much this will change everything.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, that's a statement right there. Because, like there was electric cars obviously before and other different variations. We have them now in the market, but Tesla by large is the front runner. And so really insightful to think about that. What do you guys think about that? I mean, this is a reality. We've talked about it for a while, but they're rolling them out. What do you think it'll be like whenever we're interacting and have robots around us?
I really have no idea. I mean, other than what I've seen in the movies, and it's, I don't know.
Interesting. Javen, what do you think, man?
I mean, to some degree, like, I understand that people feel like they're interacting with something that has sentience, but I feel like at a very basic level, you're just going to kind of forget that the robot is like a robot eventually. And you're just going to be like, okay, yeah, go do this for me, go do that for me. And it just becomes like a task manager for you, essentially.
Right.
And I think in the way that, like, in all these dystopian films, you have like them being so well integrated into society that they kind of just like have a set place and humans don't really view them as like extraordinary anymore. I feel like that definitely will happen.
Right.
Obviously, people will try to roll out things that emulate more of human activity, like that have sentience, that have thought, or that seem to at least, and like give their opinions on things and stuff like that. But at a very basic level, like for the Tesla robots, they're just there to perform functions for whoever owns them. Now, as for the take that they're rolling out so many robots that they're going to forget they have cars, I'm kind of shocked if they really do have that many robots planned for production versus the amount of cars that they have, just because I feel like society, especially right now, is hesitant to like fully accept having personalized robots for you. Maybe not my generation. My generation might be more open to it, but the people that have money to pay for them right now are definitely like, nah, I'd just rather have like another human do that work for me. So
I don't know, man. I kind of think, from a parental perspective, you're right. Your generation will want them.
Yeah.
People have money, their parents.
No, I know.
And so they're going to be like, a lot of your generation, differently than our generation, your generation is sponsored.
Yeah.
So they got the sponsorship of their parents on their chest. So it's like, Mommy, Daddy, I don't want a pony. I want an Optimus robot.
Yeah.
They'd be like, well, how much are they? Oh, they're $25,000. Well, it's cheaper than getting you out of jail, I guess. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
I don't know.
like, at what point is it going to be like just ubiquitous that's the new thing? It's no longer, do I have the Tiffany bracelet? Do I have the Rolex? Do I have this, Chanel bag?
Yeah,
no, I have an
robot.
Optimus.
Yeah.
And he carries my Stanley.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I dressed him out in an outfit to match my Stanley. At what point is it going to be like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
You were with me when we were talking when we were talking with Aaron. We were talking about this idea of how they're using slang already against robots.
Yeah.
I sent you guys a sketch. Did you guys happen to see the sketch of the old man that was kind of dressed up to look like Colonel Sanders?
Yeah.
You saw this?
Yeah.
The context of the skit is he has it's supposed to be like a Tesla robot. And this young guy comes over and he's talking about his robot, and he keeps on calling the robot a clanker, which we were talking about with Aaron, how Aaron was introducing that term, but I didn't really know it. He's saying, yeah, that's like a slang, a negative derogatory slang towards them. And man, you guys saw the sketch. What did you guys think, Angus?
It was taking the spin of or the angle that the old man was a plantation owner
in the South,
and
racist,
and the robot is his slave. And so
Correct, yes.
So they were using a lot of the terminology, or they were trying to get the terminology to play over.
Right.
It was very funny.
Funny.
It was very funny. But I think too, at this point, it is funny until
it's real.
Until they get feelings.
That's 100. And like people using derogatory slang towards them, like that term clanker.
Yeah.
Man, like it sounded a lot like other negative derogatory terms that we don't say. I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Jay, what was your take, man? You saw like the young guy kind of playing his grandson.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely just like a play on racism from back in the 1800s. I think like as far as, I don't really feel I feel like the attitude for saying clanker is all just done ironically.
Yeah.
In the future, because I don't really think, despite like everybody thinking that, oh my gosh, you're going to have emotions and feelings, it's like, yeah, but also the like number of people now that interact with things like AI chatbots and whatever that like are specialized to give like certain responses. So like if I like wanted an AI girlfriend, I could go and get one. Right. It's such a limited number of people versus those that you just use it for functionality that I think like the moral ramifications of like speaking negatively to an AI will not be felt by the large majority of people. But it might be interesting in the fact that if they treat an AI like that, who like kind of looks to have feelings or kind of looks to have like a sentience, how will they treat other people?
That's right.
Because then other people just kind of seem like they're task managers for them.
Right.
And then the kind of distinction is a little hazy now, because you're like, oh, how do I really act towards people, or what is my real character?
Right.
If I'm treating my robot like this, it's not a real person.
Yeah,
but then
using derogatory language.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
But then
yeah.
like that also affects the interactions that I have with other people.
Yeah,
so
you're
I think,
like, oh, you're just a clanker man.
yeah. So I think that
or whatever. You're
Yeah.
a clankster. You know, you like have some
Yeah.
other derivative of that. Yeah.
But that's like the negative that I think you take away from it. But everything else is all just done to no harm to anybody. So
yeah, they really drove it home, because he's dressed like a Southern plantation owner. He's kind of looks like that Colonel Sanders character.
Yeah.
And he keeps on using terms like field clanker and house clanker. I'm like, oh no, this is terrible. I sent it to Aaron. You know, I was like, dude, you were right. They're using this term straight away. You know, people are coming strong, but really interesting. But I think you're right, Javen. I think it has to do with the heart. And I think even as Christ followers, we need to really watch what we say, even to inanimate objects, because it starts to be something you build up in your heart. Why are you saying it to this thing in a negative way? You wouldn't say it to your toaster. You wouldn't say it to your microwave. You know, you're like, clankety microwave. You know, it doesn't make anything. So
I have said some things to Siri out of frustration now.
yeah, that's
that
true.
I'm not proud
that
of.
you can watch out. I try to be nice and try to do the other things, you know, to Siri. But yeah.
I do too, but there are sometimes, man, it's just
Jumps in.
well, or it's like a child that's intentionally not listening to. It's like, don't touch it, don't. Siri, turn that off. I'm gonna turn it down. You know,
That's right.
just messes with you.
That's true. If you're using those features, that is true. That's part of the learning process, I guess.
Yeah.
Like navigating it, being a beta tester for it in real life.
Yeah.
I know it is weird because, you know, you and I both utilize having an Apple Watch. We use the AirPods and all the things. You know, Javen, you use AirPods. And so you can talk to Siri, you can react to it. It'll read your text when you have your AirPods in. And I'll have so many times where I'm running around doing work here on campus, and I'll have an AirPod in because I'm listening to a podcast or something else. And then like someone comes up to dialogue with me, so I'll pause what I'm doing. But then someone will text me, and they'll start reading my text out over the top of a conversation I'm trying to have. Yeah. And I'm like, you know what I mean? Yeah. You're like trying to stop it with your watch or whatever. But that starts to break down your conversation. So it's almost like, okay, I got to take my AirPod out every time someone comes up to have a conversation, because it stops the flow of what you're trying to be personal, be present.
Yeah.
So it makes it really hard. But yeah, we need to watch it, I guess, with our language in the future as we start to interact with our robots that apparently we're all going to have. So
yeah,
interesting. Hey, one of the things that is going to affect us here in Arizona is some of those driverless trucks we've been talking about. In this case, 18-wheelers. And they're saying that they're going to bring out 200 of them online here to drive on the roads of Arizona. Arizona is a very spread out place. So to get to metropolitan Maricopa County, which is what Phoenix lies in the middle of, and all the Metro Phoenix lies in the middle of, it is several hours from everything. So it's 2 hours from Flagstaff, which is north. It's 2 to 2.5 hours from Tucson, which is south. You're a couple hours from California, substantial from LA. We're like 5.5, 6 hours at least. Vegas, 4 hours. So you're talking about a lot of time on the road. And there's 18-wheelers on all those roads. So I-10, 60, you know, any direction you're driving, you're going to find a lot of that. I-17, you're going to find big 18-wheelers and driving alongside them. All of us have grown up driving alongside them, so we're very used to it. But I don't know how I feel about no driver in the car for an 18-wheeler.
Yeah.
That's a lot of weight.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, to have a misconnection as they're driving through a pass, you know, in the mountains, and that, I mean, we've all had our phone die. What happens was suddenly they have no more connection with their link.
Yeah,
you know, that's an interesting idea.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so many things that can happen. And we're seeing it right now across the world with driverless and AI vehicles and stuff like that. I think that it's a little premature still. You know, I think there's still too many bugs that need to be worked out before we put that amount of weight behind AI.
Yeah, because it's not just the driving side. I mean, they can talk about how it's safer statistically for drivers, and that's probably true. I mean, you know, from what we've seen, it's fairly true. But when you start putting weight behind it, it becomes a whole nother animal. I mean, we've seen all these, like, you know, we were talking about how all the mess ups from all the delivery bots that are all over, you know, Tempe and all these other places, they're getting ran over and they're driving themselves into holes and stuff. What happens whenever you're like, you know, metric tons behind you in the truck?
Yeah.
That's a problem. So what do you think, Javen, driving next to a big 18-wheeler with no driver?
I mean, I feel like most of the time you wouldn't really notice. Like if somebody were not to have told you that was like a driverless 18-wheeler, I feel like you would just kind of treat it normally.
Okay,
so
yeah.
I think that's probably what they're going to end up doing, is not really disclose what the truck looks like, or like the reason why it's not going to be so mass spread and why it's not going to be like such a really big thing of importance is so that it's naturally integrated and people feel a lot more safe and comfortable around it. But yeah, I mean, anytime you deal with an 18-wheeler, it gets a little dicier because you are dealing with so much weight in such a big vehicle versus just something like another Waymo car or something like a really small delivery bot. If it messes up, I mean, it's like not really that big of a deal. But I mean, Waymos themselves were just barely rolled out on a highway. So to kind of see that they're taking that step is interesting. I wonder if the reason why they feel so safe about it is because they only release them or let them go at certain times of day, which is probably what I would imagine they would do, just so that if there is something like like rush hour traffic, that they're not stuck in the middle of it because it might behave a little weirdly or something like that. But yeah, I would think that if you had them running at like midnight or something, it really wouldn't be a problem, at least to most drivers, because you wouldn't really notice. You just go by it and then
Right, because you're at night, you're not looking at drivers.
Yeah, exactly. Or like really early in the morning, because there's already like such a limited number of people that are kind of going to be on the road that it's not that big of a deal. So I don't know if they're smart about it. It definitely could work. And I think 200 is kind of like an appropriate trial period, because if they did any less, then you don't really have like a good metric on what's happening. And if they did any more, then it's like, whoa, okay, now you're getting a little like out of hand with it. So
I think it's first batch, so it should be interesting to see how they roll it out. I'm assuming they will put loads and stuff, because that's the future. You know, it's sad because that's a major job for lots of people. We have a lot of people in our church that's what they do as a job, is drive delivery, drive a truck, big 18-wheelers, and it's a big skill set.
Yeah.
So for that job to be taken away, it's very similar to that turn of the century thing when cars came online in the 1900s. You know, suddenly carriage drivers and people that take care of horses and all this stuff, and all that stuff shifted. You know, like people who clean up behind the horses and the people who feed the horses, all those jobs went away suddenly, and you had to replace them with other jobs. That was a petrol station, and that's these other people. So we'll have that same shift happen as these things kind of come online. So that'll be very, very interesting. In alignment with that, you just brought it up, Waymo. They've been in the Phoenix market for a long time. They've been in Vegas, a couple other markets, but they are rolling out. Just launched in Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, and Orlando. So Waymo is going. It's taking off and going. It's like going to be ubiquitous pretty soon in all the major cities. So very interesting to see. Arizona's on the front end of all this tech stuff. Obviously, we have TMSC. Is that right? Did I say that right? TSMC. Yeah. They have the big chip factory here. We have a bunch of Intel we've had for a long time, and these other big pieces. A bunch of them are coming online here as well. And so for that to happen, Waymo's been here a long time.
Yeah, for sure.
Between us and San Francisco and some other places. So we're kind of on the front end of that. We've been the first ones with drones. A lot of these cities also implemented drones. And so you see a lot of that stuff happening too, which is pretty interesting. But it's going to be everywhere, man.
Yeah.
Hey, tell about your experience. Did you tell us on the podcast about your experience?
No, not on the podcast. I think I just told you. So I was just in a Waymo, I want to say like a week and a half ago. It was pretty cool. I took one at like midnight, so there really weren't any drivers on the road, but it was pretty dope. Like, you just put in what location you're at, and it has like pre-designated stops because it can't go in a certain location. So like I was at my friend's apartment complex, so it just pulled into like this little roundabout where you would like put in the gate code, and it just like parked there for a minute. And I think you have like a 3-minute grace period where the car shows up. You can get in the car, you press like an unlock button on your phone, and then it unlocks the actual car unlocks. And then you can sit anywhere you want. So you can sit in the driver's seat, but you just can't touch anything, or else it'll start to go like haywire on you. So I just sat in the passenger seat and like filmed and kind of just was like taking in the whole thing. It was pretty cool. You can control like your music. If you want to put like a radio station on, you can do that. But you can't sync up Bluetooth. I think the reason why they do that is just because of how many people they have come in and out. So there would be like an issue with connection or how many devices are loaded on the car, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, it's a Jaguar body, so it's pretty nice. Like, you get the convenience and the luxury of like being able to lay back, enjoy like leather seats and stuff. And when it drops you off, you just like confirm that you end a ride. And then like after you make sure that you have everything, the car will stay unlocked for a while. And then I think you have like, it's like 5 minutes to make sure that you have everything, that everybody's out of the car, and just that you have all your possessions on you, and then you relock the car, and then it can go on whatever route it needs to after that. So it's pretty cool, yeah. Like I would definitely do it again. I mean, it is like decently expensive, but I mean, it's definitely a better alternative than having like a bunch of people that might be like slightly, I don't know, like or something like that.
Or park their car at their friend's apartment and get their car towed.
Yeah, maybe something like that. I don't know.
I mean, there's no reason he was actually taking this way.
No. But
wasn't at the directive of his parents or anything.
No, but yeah, it was pretty cool. Like I don't know. I would definitely do it again. I felt safe, but I'm also kind of more in like a city type of environment. If you took one out here, it'd be a little different. But there's also I feel like there's less drivers out here.
Yeah, I haven't seen them out here. It's more like in the center of town.
I don't know where they would keep them. I think the only possible spot that you could have is like a factory or like a warehouse that they all sit at, and then kind of just like go from there. But I don't really think there's a big market for here. Definitely downtown Phoenix, definitely Tempe. It makes sense in like Orlando, and definitely Houston and Dallas. As like somebody that's been through Dallas, dude, you need to drive everywhere over there.
Yeah,
it's
same as here.
It's terrible.
You just have to drive everywhere.
No, I know, but I mean, it's probably just going to become like something that's rolled out in a bunch of cities. I'm waiting for a really big city to kind of like be big on Waymo, like NY or LA, because I know like they've ran them in San Fran and things like that. Right. But until we really see like a big city get behind it, I think it'll kind of just be. I mean, towards all these smalls.
We're number 6.
Yeah,
Dallas is number 4.
All right, well, the greater
and
Dallas
Houston
region,
is 5. So I mean, they're going up the list. I mean, the Chicago, New York, LA. That's the last 3.
I know. As soon as they hit 2, I think they'll kind of like cement themselves as like, oh yeah, this is legit, and there's like no concerns behind it.
This move, if it's successful in Texas, it's successful. Full stop. Florida and Texas, that's successful. Yeah, because they'll run Miami, right? Miami's behind us, but they'll in size. They'll run Miami. They'll run these other places, and then that's a wrap. And that'll be kind of the future of that. Then it'll be Tesla fighting them for the auto for that market. Yeah, because they're going to roll out the ones without the steering yoke, and you could sit in all the seats in the car, and it just automatically goes where you want it to go. Whereas the Waymo is still a Jaguar that they've retrofitted. Yeah, still has a steering wheel and stuff. Whereas in the future they're going to not have anything. Yeah. Even in those, they're not going to have anything at all. Yeah, it'll be wild. So it'll be really interesting to see those things running and off to the races. So I thought it was interesting. I wanted you to share your perspective because I knew that you'd just been in it, and that's pretty cool to check out and see what it's like. You know, I had interacted with them because the friends are getting in and out of them, and I was like, oh, this is crazy. So I kind of stick your head in there and check it out. You and I were at a golf event not too long ago, and we pulled into the parking lot, which had 3 Waymos stuck in the parking lot driving around trying to get out because they didn't know how to exit. It was like we had gone to a good golf event that was happening after the Waste Management, and so we went to Waste Management, and then we went over to Good Golf, and so it's at a different thing in Tempe. So we moved from Scottsdale to Tempe and drove over there. Once we got over there, we were looking for a parking space, and we knew, wow, we might be stuck here. So we drove up. We ended up parking on the driving range is where you end up parking because they needed overflow. But people got dropped off by Waymos, and the Waymos are just trying to figure their way out, dude. But it's not a normal parking lot, so it's not mapped. Yeah. So they're just trying to get out of there. And now the other Waymos are blocking the other Waymo. I don't know how they got out of it, if they had to get somebody on a controller to get out of there or what. Yeah, for sure. Wow. Pretty crazy. Along those lines, there was a guy who recently he wanted to try and hack his robot vacuum. I don't know why, but he used Claude. We talked about Claude. He got Claude and loaded a Claude. Bought this like really expensive bougie vacuum. It's based in a China company. But then he hacked it and ended up not just driving his robot. He ended up driving 7,000 of these cleaning robots. He ended up hacking them and getting access to drive them. I think it was his PlayStation controller. What was it? Yeah. Remember what it was? Angus, you can speak to it. You have one of these things.
Yeah, I have one, which I've thought about this possibility and stuff. And it's so I actually turned mine off and let it discharge
as soon as you heard that he hacked it.
Well, no, I had already done that because I saw that once I saw the way that these things map your house and stuff. You know that it's very easy for them to just key into your device. So I've been pretty cautious about it. But yeah, this guy, he was trying to hook it up so he could control it with his PlayStation. Right. And when he got in, it wasn't just that he could control them, but he could access all of the cameras in all of these all of these homes. Yes. So thankfully, this guy was honest about it and he reported it. So they fixed the glitch. But yeah, he was able to see into all these people's homes and all of that stuff because it's what you give your
he could have been a straight creeper, man. I'm super glad that he was not that guy. Yeah. Which is pretty rare that a guy can hack in and then still has morals. Yeah. So there's a piece of that. That's a really interesting idea. But yeah, Yeah. So be aware. Anything that has cameras can be looking at you, whether or not you like it. So pay attention where you put your cameras at.
Yeah.
I know we have some cameras. We have cameras, outside cameras. We have inside cameras, but our inside cameras are only in places that are like family rooms, stuff like that. Not any bedrooms, not any bathrooms, nothing like that. Because we don't want that to be a thing. We don't want that to be an issue. And we don't have any movable cameras anywhere that they could view into a bathroom. So we have stable cameras that are that, because we have some that can move. You can move it with your phone and kind of spin it around, and it'll kind of do, you get a 360-degree view. So you don't want to put that in any place where they can constantly look in at any spots. So try to keep all the creepers at bay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Hey, we talked about we talked recently about a drone driving thing where people took an industrial sized drone, they cut out the basket in it, and they got into the drone and were flying it around. Yeah. Well, a company called Jetson. Yes, Jetson. They actually have made these personal rideable drones, and they are now racing them against each other and flying them in a course. Have you guys seen this?
Oh, it looks so cool.
It does look cool. It looks like if you crash, you super dead.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I'm curious about like the legality of it and what sort of licensure do you have to have, and like where can you operate these things, and because man, for the first time I'm starting to see flying cars in our future. Yes. I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, pretty crazy to just like jump in your deal, fly right over the traffic. But then, dude, everyone's going to shortcut over your house.
Oh, yeah.
There's going to be some crazy rules to this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Someone, if they're on their phone and they forget and they haven't charged their thing, and suddenly their thing just decides to send on your house. That's like they just end up in your backyard. Like, what? You know what I mean? Like, crazy ideas. Javen, you seen this? The racing Jetsons?
No, I've not. I haven't seen any of that. I've barely even seen the rideable drones as is. I think like that whole concept is kind of crazy to me, but it's pretty cool. To race in them, that'd be exhilarating, but it'd also be, it's pretty scary. Like imagine you're literally in a flying object that's going like, how fast can they go?
They didn't. I don't know if I saw that, but they look like a race car. I mean, it's like it has the cockpit like shape the way you think racing. It has that, and it has the like obviously they levitate, but then I think they can tilt to make it go forward faster or whatever. Really interesting.
That is well.
Yeah, very, very interesting. So, yeah, that baby got some speed. That'd be really crazy because we see all the racing drones where they put the first-person goggles on and they're racing them, and those things zip, dude. They fly. So, if they scaled that up, who knows? I mean, obviously, you guys who are more lightweight would probably be zipping through the planet, but mine would be a little bit more laggard behind. But that's okay. It's okay. Still be flying. Hey, one of the things that we also want to talk about here is how there are scientists that have been working on some really cool adaptations that aren't necessarily a robot. And one of the cool things we saw was they are making artificial gills. It's like a mouthpiece you put in that has these long tubes on the side that gets air from the water that you can breathe underwater, which essentially would make diving now a thing where you don't have to have a pack on your back. So as a diver, as someone who's a certified diver and a deep dive, I've done night dives and wreck dives and all sorts of cool dives in my life. Man, to have the ability to just put something in your mouth the way you see it like on movies, like James Bond. Yeah, where he has like the little air thing. I always thought, oh, that's just an air canister. You just breathe in a certain amount of breaths. And they have those. They have like tubes that you can refill. You could be down there for a few minutes. But to have that, where it's actually taking the oxygen from the water, that's cool.
That's wild.
That's cool. We're going to find Atlantis.
For sure, yeah.
What do you think, Jamin? You're not a big deep water guy.
Well, I just haven't really been. Well, I've never been scuba certified or anything like that.
True.
I think I've only gone snorkeling, and that's about
right. I was trying to get you guys to go deep.
Yeah,
did not work.
No. I'm more interested in it now. I think I really just didn't like the water when I was a kid, just because of the whole like sand thing. I don't know why it bothered me so much, but just like the way that sand kind of like washes up like on your skin, and I was like I wasn't a fan of it. But now just being at the beach is like really relaxing, and I enjoy getting in the water a lot. Up. Yeah. But
me and Shy living in the water like fish.
Yeah, but I mean, like when we were in whatchamacallit, in the
like Hurghada or Sharm el Sheikh or something?
In the Atlantic this summer in in St. Martin. Yeah, like I was getting in the water like a whole bunch because I just enjoyed it.
That's true.
So I think I don't know. I've kind of like come around on that just because I enjoy being out there more. But yeah, for sure, it'd be kind of wild. I think we've had access to that technology for a long time. Like as far as military use, they've just haven't disclosed any of it for obvious reasons. But if it comes out commercially, that'd be pretty crazy to be able to buy that.
Yeah.
It's going to be a ton of money initially, but I think like eventually they'll probably scale it to the point that like people can't afford it and things like that. And that'd be pretty crazy.
I know, just turn all the air conditioning off in the house and live in the bottom of the pool.
Yeah, probably. Probably.
It's a very dad thing to say.
Yeah.
Angus, what do you think, man? Would you do it? Are you a guy in the water?
Oh yeah, I was a swimmer.
Yeah.
I ended up in the swimming pool at 6 months old, learned to swim. So I think that's such a cool idea.
Yeah.
I've always thought it would be an incredible invention. And I always figured, well, if fish can do it, there's got to be a process.
Why not us?
So it's really cool to see that that's something now. I would love to one day experience it. I think it'd be so cool.
Same. I mean, just what I'd be able to do. I mean, just be able to throw that in with some fins and a snorkel. I mean, in a face mask and be able to like just go, dude, so cool.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's some stipulation to it on depth and all the other things that work that way just based on the oxygen in the water. But man, what a cool thing, that concept.
Yeah.
Very, very neat. I'm looking forward to it. I really hope that I get to get my hands on it too in my lifetime. It'd be really sweet. So excited on that. Hey, France has the CERN reactor. It's there in kind of southeast France, and we've been by where they've built it, and it's kind of right there between that and Switzerland. And that reactor essentially is trying to replicate and smash particles into each other that simulate kind of the Big Bang and the beginning of the universe, and also trying to replicate the energy from the sun. Recently, they reported that they had ran the CERN reactor at what was the level of the energy of the sun for over 20 minutes, which is a really interesting concept. It's both frightening and encouraging, because you're like, okay, well, this is cool because they're starting some energy. Obviously, we know the energy of the sun is massive. So if this is somehow now a replacement as clean energy, what a concept to have something like this. But also super scary because they don't know what happens whenever they turn this thing on or off, for that matter. So they're like, once they turn it on, they're like, oh, if we turn it off, is it going to break the whole planet?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So really interesting to think about that.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I didn't see anything more than really the headline. I didn't read into this, but I'm pretty skeptical of just about everything that CERN does. Just because
it has the big god of Sheba and death out front.
Yeah, that's part of it.
Yeah, that's part of it.
Some of their ceremonies and rituals and things that they do. There's just a lot of weirdness that goes on there, and so I don't doubt that they did do that, but for what purpose, what reason, and what's going to be the outcome of it. That's what I'm always just kind of a little wary of. Some
of these big ceremonies they are very occultic in nature and symbolic in nature. I mean, you're like, I thought you were a science place.
Yeah, and there's a lot of talk of
this?
Portals and a lot of things that they're doing that because I mean they're messing with the fabric of existence is kind of what they're saying, and so I think that there's a lot of things that we shouldn't be messing with, and I think that the stuff that they're doing is some of it.
Interesting. Yeah, Javen, you looked into CERN. Are you aware of what CERN is doing?
No, honestly,
as a mission. No. It's a very interesting idea. They are trying to replicate this thing. They've made this massive thing. It's multiple kilometers, the circle, and it's made underground. It's dug out and bore out, and they have this massive thing, and they're spinning these particles and shooting electrons, protons into each other and seeing what's going to happen with it. It's very interesting as far as that goes. And literally, when they turned it on for the very first time, they weren't sure they weren't going to blow up the world. They weren't sure what was going to happen. And there's more than one CERN location. And so it's really interesting. But you're right. People have been reporting opening, quote, portals to other places. I'd heard one woman give an interview. She seemed very candid, but it's hard to say because you don't know where she's connected to.
Sure.
And nowadays, everything AI, but it seemed very legitimate in her conversation that she said, I talked to two different people working at two different places that do a similar job at both places. She was also in the circle, having worked at the main CERN in France. And she said that both persons, though they did not know each other, said, yeah, we've so far identified 17 portals. And you're like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
Into where? Into what exactly?
Yeah.
Is this dimensions? Is this space and time? Like, what are you saying? You know what I mean? And if so, can I get some stock tips from the early 2000s?
Yeah.
It's like one of these things where you're like, okay, you're going back. Like, what's happening here? So it's hard for us to say. Obviously, we're grounded in the truth and faith of what's happening right now and want to be good for what's happening in our life here. But it is interesting to think about. Like, what are these guys doing? What is the ramifications of that?
Yeah.
There's sometimes I think God has blessed us with a block of some of the knowledge spiritually because it's like, man, if we saw everything that's happening in the supernatural, that would be surreal. So are they somehow having some kind of interaction with the spiritual? I don't know. You know what I mean? That's what comes to my mind immediately. So I don't know. Interesting to think about.
Yeah.
The UK has a laser weapon. Always great. Lasers. They have a laser weapon that is now used to shoot down drones, and it's said to be able to do so at the speed of light, which is significant. And they haven't really indicated exactly how this works, but the report that I saw was that because they fear drones in such a big way that they are using essentially a bigger version of what we've been talking about with mosquitoes. Remember the mosquito shooting down lasers? It's essentially like that, where it identifies the drone through the rotors and everything else, and kind of the whatever the sonic
signature
footprint, signature footprint it makes, and so they be able to laser those bad boys and just shoot them out. Yeah, and it's so fast the thing can't react to get away from the targeting, which that's insightful.
Yeah,
also really kind of frightening a little bit, because when does the laser stop exactly?
Yeah,
how does that work? I think we talked a little bit about that.
Yeah,
it's like that was the funny part about like Star Wars, is that, you had a lightsaber that had some kind of end to the saber for some reason, which if you turned on a real laser, it just goes indefinitely till it hits something. So you'd naturally be carving up everything, hitting planes and so on and so forth. So it is a really interesting thing to think about. Any fears, any thoughts on the UK laser thought?
I mean, I think it's great for defense and all of that, especially where we're going to be headed in the world of warfare. So I think that we'll see that, I mean, it'll be kind of like the Iron Dome or anything like that. So I think that we'll see more of that happen. I'd like to see some of it for personal use, to be honest.
shoot all the pigeons off your roof.
Oh yeah,
trying to get on your solar.
That'd be great. Well, I mean, if you find yourself under an Amazon delivery route,
like we were talking about before with the In-N-Out burger, you're able to shoot it down to get a delivery dropped at your house. That's true. One of the things we did see, we didn't put it in this, but one of the things that's rolling out right now is that, I think maybe we did talk about this, but it's Walmart has been rolling out drones just like Amazon. So they are now doing that and starting to roll those out from every place there's a Walmart. They're starting to launch these drones in cities that allow them to do so. But they're going to be a direct competition. They've learned from Amazon. Now they're going to roll it out. So it's really interesting. You see them building them up everywhere, where they're starting to roll these things out and fly the delivery just to you, just like Amazon. So they're going to be a direct competitor, but they are everywhere. They're not just on the fringe where a lot of the Amazon warehouses are. No, these are like right in the middle of town. Yeah. So that should be really insightful.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to the noise pollution that comes as a result of that,
That's true. That is true. I wonder if that'll become like a major issue.
Yeah, well, and I unfortunately, if we're not hearing anything about legislation beforehand, we're gonna be on the back end of it.
True.
And so that's what I see is if there's not something that designates pathways and all that, but when they're delivering to a house, they're going to have to come into neighborhoods, and so it's just going to be ridiculous. There's going to have to be quiet hours and things like that, I think, but. If we don't regulate beforehand, we're gonna have to rely on our politicians to do the right thing once the corporations have already set the tone.
I mean, the politicians that get elected by getting donations from corporations?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Same people? Mm-hmm. Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
One of the other C's we talk about is community, and one of the focuses we've had here has been talking about a future family. Well, that's been one that's focused on the things of God to see the future of our family thrive. Talking about a lot of different attributes there, but one of the things we talked about recently was not being fake. And I would say, man, one of the challenges I've seen the most in my life as a Christian, especially growing up as a pastor's kid, was I saw a lot of fakeness. And I'll say first and foremost in my own life, in that I was someone who, I would put on a face as if I was living a righteous life or a pious life, and I wasn't. I was like doing these things that were kind of, I would have been ashamed for if the people at church knew about it, living a totally different life with other people. And so it was one of those things where you didn't want you could never invite a person to church because your non-church friend knows how you're living, and your church friend expects you to be a totally different person. And so our challenge to all of us is to not live a fake life, to not be fake, but instead be fierce after the things of God. Guys, what do you think, man? The plasticity of sometimes Christian world can be a little bit fake, huh?
Absolutely. Well, before I became a Christian, I kind of prided myself on the fact that I was a chameleon, being in theater, that I could fit in with this group and this group. And so I didn't realize how fragmented I was, because I had this group of friends and this group of friends. And I never wanted those groups to meet because I was a different person with each of them, just because I fit in differently. Right. And so not only is it that exhausting, but it's not easy to maintain. And so, coming into a Christian life and realizing that you don't have to do that, it can be a process to consolidate back into one person and everything, but it's definitely worth it.
Right.
And, man, it's so much easier to just not have to remember who you are wherever you're at based on location.
Such a good point, man. I love that. Javan, what about you, man, about like plastic Christianity and the inauthenticity that sometimes we see in our communities?
Yeah, I mean, plasticity is such a difficult thing because I feel like the temptation a lot of the times, and it's not just for like new believers or people that like just come into the church and are kind of gaining their footing, but especially for people that have been going there for a long time, kind of fall into this cycle that it's like, okay, this is just the norm. Like you kind of go through the motions every single time you go to church. Like it's like monotonous almost. And because of that, people kind of lose the spark that they have in their personal relationship with Christ. And so they kind of just start doing whatever because they kind of lose sight of what they're really going for. And in that, they just kind of act one way outside of church. And then once they get back to church, they're like, okay, yeah, I know exactly how to do this, like going through the motions, almost like you're doing a job.
Right.
So it's very interesting. And I think that's such a hard thing. And I know like for pastors' kids, this is not only been something that's been like difficult for me, but for other people as well, is because like we hear the same messages over and over and over again, like so many times.
Right.
It's like at some point you feel bogged down by all of it, that you actually like lose sight of just how deep and how important and how insightful the messages that are being given actually are, and how vivid and real the words of the Lord like truly are. You just kind of like bog it down as more church jargon, which is, it's a really saddening thing, but it's also like at some point it just feels somewhat inevitable. Like we go through these seasons of like where you really feel on fire for God, and then other seasons where you feel like you're just kind of waiting and like being idle and doing whatever. So I mean, it's definitely a spiritual check for every single believer that comes into the church to continue to fan that flame and just be really intentional with the way that you see God. But yeah, definitely like as far as plasticity knows, yeah, that's been my experience with it.
That's right. No fake friends, no fake family, no fake faith. We're called to be those that are fierce after the things of God and not fake. The Lord help us.
Amen.
One of the things we talk about is the C's is competence, and looking to close out this book, Winning the World in Your Mind. Powerful book. I really love it, from Pastor Craig Rochelle. One of the things he talks about here is revive your soul, reclaim your life. I really like his point there in reviving your soul, reclaim your life. He's talking about soul care in this instance. And Angus, you had a chance to go through this book with me. What do you think about that?
Yeah, this one, as hard as it is to admit, this one's a tough one for me. Because as somebody who serves and all of that, it's very easy to get forward focused, and to be so busy doing the ministry that you forget that you need to be ministered to and things like that. And so this was, I remember when we read it, this was one that I had a difficult time with, just because I recognize that I'm not very good at this, just because I got used to running. And just running, that, after a while, you don't realize that you're tired. You just keep going.
Yeah.
And one of the recurring themes of my life is that happens. And I end up in a place where I'm not taking care of myself in the way that I should. And then I end up tired and exhausted and bitter or angry or whatever,
sick
and complaining.
Or whatever. Yeah.
And then Lord goes, well, you did this to yourself. It's, it's kind of your fault. And he has to put it to me that way. And then I rectify it. And, the problem is I just have to get it to sink and really do it routinely. I need to make it a part of who I am so that I can do it.
And I'll give you more credit than you're giving yourself right now, in that you are a very insightful person and someone listening to the Holy Spirit of God to challenge your life. So I will say that about you as a friend and as a colleague. But I understand the challenge to be those who revive and do that. There's a thing that our network of churches is doing, actually coming up right now. And they call it the Desert Fathers, and where they go away for a few days. They were going to the desert and camping, then they were going kind of to glamping. Now they're kind of going to like a resort area, but it's still the same purpose, is that they're going to still go and sit out towards the edge of the desert and do these things. And so the places they're choosing are still very focused that way. And the challenge is no phone, no TV, no streaming. Like, quiet your heart, quiet your soul, quiet your who you are, to listen to what God is doing. And man, I wanted to go to that, but I was too busy.
Yeah.
Which is very telling of my own.
Yeah.
To talk about back to the revive side is very telling my own pattern.
Yeah.
But I will say, last year I felt slapped by the Holy Spirit to be like, "What are you doing? You're running, burning the candle both ends. You're gonna burn out." And so I really felt challenged to step back and to do some things. And I've been a lot more intentional the last few months. I'm very thankful for that reason, because I'm like, no, I need to, in being someone who pours out often, I need to be someone who is taking in more than I'm pouring out.
Yeah.
Or else you're not gonna stay refreshed.
Yeah.
And so there was definitely a season where I was pouring out and I was below the halfway mark.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is not healthy.
Yeah.
So it's got to be different. So the Lord is faithful, always there. It's whether or not we're open to what he wants to do in reviving our soul.
Yep.
Javen, what do you think, man? Revive your soul.
I totally relate with what both of you said, as far as like the idea of like kind of just feeling like you're like running and running and running, that you don't really know how to stop. Especially like junior and senior year of high school, it felt like, because my life was starting to become more busy and I like assume more responsibility, which like now I'm just like, okay, yeah, like back then I didn't really have
comparison is different.
Yeah, exactly. But like in the moment, it definitely feels like
feels
you're
busy.
gaining, you're gaining a lot more. During that time, it just kind of felt like I would just have to do everything that I did during the week. And then as soon as I kind of hit the weekend, it was like, okay, I'm serving both services, and that's how it's going to be. That's how it was for me for almost like 4-5 years straight, basically since like end of 8th grade, beginning of 9th grade. That's how it always felt for me. So I was just used to like serving all the time, that it got to a point where like any time that I didn't need to serve, which was like extremely rare during that time, but anytime I didn't need to serve, I would just be chilling in service, and it would feel like almost wrong to me. Like I didn't know how to be there or how to be present, because I was so used to doing to just kind of what you guys are saying, like pouring out, that there was nothing that I felt like it was hard to receive again, which is really interesting. I've heard Griffin McGrath talk about this, because we were at like a PK retreat. I think it was like a junior. So during this time, he was giving a very similar analogy to what Angus was saying, but he was saying it from the perspective of like a cup. If the Holy Spirit is filling you, like when you're attending church and receiving the word that he gives you, you're instructed to then serve other people and pour that out. But it needs to be a constant process, because if you're just serving, at some point you're not really pouring anything out. You're just going through the motions. Yeah. And yeah, for me, that was so difficult. It was like, especially as soon as I started college and I wasn't always going here, and I like started checking out these other churches, it was interesting, because I was like, oh, it feels really weird for me to like actually be here and to be somebody that's seeking to receive, rather than like my immediate instinct was like, oh, what the heck? I'm like not running a camera. I'm like not running lights or sound for anything that's doing. So I was like, oh, dude. And I mean, and
nobody on comms telling you something.
Exactly. So it feels kind of strange. And I think it definitely needs to be a give and take process. And it really is the Holy Spirit checking you and being like, okay, you really need to lock in and like understand why I'm having you like slow down, like with what you're saying, like a week without walls, where like you have nothing that's bounding you from just receiving what God wants to pour in your life. So that's something that I struggle with as well. And I think, it's so important to just constantly replenish that soul care.
I think it's why we started out we did the beginning of this year, and I'm very thankful for it. But being intentional to do 21 days of fasting and prayer, I think it helps you reset, helps to do that very thing, 100%. Refresh you, revive your spirit, revive your soul. Thankful for that. So really good challenge from Pastor Craig on that front.
Yeah.
One of the other books we're talking about is Dream Big by Bob Goff. And one of the things he's talking about is have a dream that is aspirational and you're going towards. And a really interesting idea, he's talking about understanding of where you've come from, understanding where you are, understanding where you want to go. And one of the challenges he says here is to set absurd expectations. The idea is to have a dream that's bigger than you, because if it's attainable by you alone, then it's not a guy-sized dream. And so there's a piece of that I really appreciate. Have you ever had an absurd expectation or absurd dream that's bigger than you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's one of the things that when I first became a pastor, one of the things that we do is we go to what's called the Dream Conference. Yeah. And that's really a big part of it, is getting pastors to dream for something bigger than themselves, so that they can have kingdom-sized dreams and do kingdom-sized things here on earth. And so that's one of those things. I spent the first several years of my ministry praying, and so the Lord gave me a big dream, and I've kind of stalled out in the pursuit of it, but it's one of those that it's still there. I still want to accomplish it at one point.
Praise the Lord.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been a part of that, and we take our team to it. Our team's going this year to Dream Conference. Very thankful for Luke Barnett, for Pastor Tommy Barnett, for the whole crew that puts that on, and I have a lot of friends that are on staff there, and very thankful for them. They open up their church. They have all their different leaders who are over their areas speak to different things. They've talked about things I wanted to learn from that we didn't know. We had a lot of tech stuff that we learned from them, just having insight on what to do, what not to do, understanding our scale versus how much things cost, and just really good. So I was very thankful for that. A lot of them pouring out into other people. So that was a really positive thing. Jensen Franklin, we've heard from all sorts of people. We heard Charlie Kirk when he was still with us. We heard challenging word from him, and I both agreed and disagreed with Charlie and some of the stuff he was saying, just simply because he's not a pastor. He's speaking to pastors about what they should do from his perspective, having not been one. So it was really interesting, and I told my team so. I was like, listen, this is a political pundit. Yeah, he's a Christ follower, but he's political in his nature, so his whole frame of reference is through politics. Whereas ours is different. Our main focus is to connect people to Jesus. So our main focus is always going to be that. And so it was really interesting for us to kind of understand that you can both agree and disagree with a person simultaneously. And that was the case with that and others. But man, what a challenge, because he's talking about big concepts. And, Pastor Luke talking about big concepts. Obviously, Tommy for years and years being the pastor of Phoenix First Assembly, now Dream City. Man, what a great challenge. So I'm thankful for that idea to have absurd expectations. We've talked about that here, coming into the seat, talked about recently on the podcast. I've been here 5 years as the lead pastor of the church. And in doing so, the vision, the values, those things are pieces that I need to steward, and I need to be forecasting and essentially encouraging other people to join with us in those pursuits. We talked about how, when we were just a smaller number of people, how we wanted to grow to the point that we needed 2 services. And then we grew to that point, we saw it happen. Then we wanted to grow and see the expansion of the balcony. And a year ago, we were able to see those things come to fruition a little bit over a year ago. And that's been powerful. And then now it's to see and plant more campuses, more churches. And that's still in our vision. And those are big steps, each one of those big steps. But God is faithful. And I want to see that happen. I want to see us have a bigger global impact. I want to see a lot of these things happen, and I'm very thankful that the Lord gives us that dream that's not possible by ourselves. We have to do it collectively. We have to do it alongside him. Yeah. It's his vision in our heart. So that's I really like that from where Bob's talking about. Javan, how about you, man? Big dream, something that you want to see accomplished?
I don't know. I think for me, everything's just kind of been, I've been taking it like incrementally. I think if there's anything big, it's been like, oh, what like aspirationally do you want to be? I mean, when I was a kid, I was like, oh, I want to be a soccer player. Or, oh, I like want to do X, Y, Z. But no, I think like right now I'm definitely in the period where I'm kind of looking at everything on like a smaller scale, understanding like the steps I need to take in order to prepare myself to be in a situation where the Lord can use me in whatever facet he would need. Because when you're well equipped, you can do what you need. But if he calls you and you're not ready, very similar to what we've been talking about so much with the 10 virgins, and it's like the people that didn't have oil for their lamps, they're just kind of like left in the dark, literally. Yeah. So it's like you need to be prepared like for what he has for you. And I think I'm just kind of in that season where just stay true, stay faithful to what he would have me to do, so that when I do receive like a vision or I feel something in my heart like that I need to like fully put my effort towards that's greater than myself, then I'd be ready to do it. So
that's awesome, man. I love to hear you say that. It's encouraging to me as a pastor, but more specifically as your dad, to hear you say that you want to listen to the heart of God and to go after the plans of God. Really great. Amen. Really, really great. If I was going to choose for you, I would want you to be the president of Venezuela so that we can take all the resources to America. I'm just kidding. But that we could have a really dope Venezuelan daughter-in-law that loves Jesus. I know she's not Colombian, so she's not a Christian Shakira, but Venezuelan, also awesome. So, hey, man, a lot of great stuff that we talked through today. A lot of crazy stuff today. One word to leave the podcast.
Is it me again?
Sure.
Okay, sorry, it just got quiet again. I'm gonna go authenticity.
Compassion.
And I'm gonna say dream. Thanks so much for joining with us and being a part of the collective. Much love to you wherever you are.